Chapter 91. The void that was opened up inside the square seal was just a simple space similar to the cosmos in the sleeve. It was not like the void inside the Wuji Palace, which was a complete mini kiliacosm that could generate vitality on its own. The biggest function of this void was to store objects and primordial chi. Luo Fan floated in the void and felt the steady silver light around him. He secretly deduced the power of the G-square seal and was very satisfied. The power of this treasure is enough. I don't need any more Dharma treasures in a short period of time. Luo Fan evaluated. Then, with a thought, he turned into a ray of light and charged forward. The space distorted, and he disappeared from the space inside the square seal. In the blink of an eye, he returned to the primordial world and sat cross-legged on the meditation cushion in the cave abode. The G-square seal floated in front of him. The fist-sized seal looked very mysterious. Luo Fan raised his hand and pointed. The G-square seal turned into a silver light and rushed out. It turned around and soon went to the top of Buzhou Mountain. It turned into a huge stone platform and sank into the liquid chaotic chi. The G-square seal could not generate primordial chi by itself. In order to strengthen its power, it could only absorb chaotic chi from the outside. Sensing that the Fong Yin had transformed into a black hole that swallowed the boundless chaotic essence, chi, to its heart's content, Luo Fan smiled lightly and closed his eyes. With a command in his heart, the earthly immortal Tao fruit collapsed with a bang and transformed into a strand of magic energy. Following that, a mysterious mantra flowed through his mind. At the same time, this magical power surged endlessly and slowly circulated according to the route of the nameless cultivation method. Luo Fan had not been a perfected immortal for long. This made it impossible for him to use the mana perfectly after the breakthrough. Therefore, he needed to practice it often in order to use it perfectly again. The nameless cultivation method he cultivated had 12 realms, which corresponded to the 12 realms of the four fruits of Wei. Even so, the nameless cultivation method was not divided into 12 sections. Each section corresponded to one realm. In fact, the entire nameless cultivation method was a whole. No matter which realm, the nameless cultivation method followed the same route and the mantra was the same. It was just that the profoundness of the different realms was different. In the blink of an eye, another 8 months had passed. This time, Luo Fan slowly woke up from the deep state of cultivation. He opened his eyes, which seemed to contain two deep universes. These 8 months of cultivation had allowed him to slightly improve his control over the magic power within his body. However, this was not the reason why Luo Fan had woken up from his cultivation state. Buy-in request to see my benefactor. A respectful voice came from outside the cave. That was the reason why he woke up. Luo Fan stood up, took a few steps, and arrived outside the cave. He saw a middle-aged man dressed in a green robe, who emitted an awe-inspiring aura. It was the incarnation of the god of Buzhou Mountain. It could only be his incarnation. The god of Buzhou Mountain could not let his main body out. He could only come with his incarnation since he was more than 90,000 kilometers away from his main body. Fellow Taoist Buzhou, it must have been hard for you to come from afar. Luo Fan smiled and led the incarnation into the cave. The god of Buzhou Mountain had been hard for him. He had traveled more than 90,000 kilometers from the foot of the mountain, but he had walked for more than 9 months on his feet. This attitude was too serious. The god of Buzhou Mountain seemed very embarrassed and ashamed. He seemed to be embarrassed that his benefactor treated him so well when he came with his incarnation. He also seemed to be uneasy that he had made Luo Fan wait for so long. At that moment, there were still few living beings in the primordial world, but they did not have much worldly wisdom. Therefore, after the two of them sat down, the god of Buzhou Mountain did not exchange much pleasantries. He only thanked Luo Fan for imparting the Tao and bestowing the Dharma. Then he asked Luo Fan about the various questions that he had encountered while cultivating the great Tao of Heavenly God Technique and the Heavenly God Transcendence Technique. Luo Fan originally wanted to answer Mountain God Buzhou's questions, so he naturally wouldn't hold anything back. Instead, he told him everything he knew analyzing and explaining all the problems that mountain god Buzhou had encountered. As Luo Fan explained, the god of Buzhou Mountain would look enlightened from time to time. He was excited, and it was obvious that he had gained a lot. The heavenly god transcendence technique had more than 300 words. However, most of the questions that the god of Buzhou Mountain asked were related to the transcendence technique with more than 300 words. Towards that long explanation of the Grand Tao, there weren't many things that he didn't understand. Luo Fan knew that the god of Buzhou Mountain had a clear goal through the questions that he had asked. He knew that the most important thing to him was the fate of transcending the mountain god. To be able to instinctively sense that his aptitude was indeed astonishing. He could not help but feel that it was a pity that he was a mountain god. With the thought of cherishing talents, Luo Fan explained the transcendence technique to the god of Buzhou Mountain even more wholeheartedly. Although the transcendence technique was obscure and mysterious, and could only be comprehended by oneself, and could not be taught, he could not explain it clearly. However, he tried his best to use words to guide the god of Buzhou Mountain so that there was a higher possibility of him comprehending the transcendence technique. Luo Fan was doing his best. The god of Buzhou Mountain was beaming when he heard that. His incarnation trembled nonstop. Sometimes it would disperse into countless three-dimensional talismans. Sometimes it would gather into the image of a middle-aged man. He was clearly excited and could not control himself. In the blink of an eye, 7 days and 7 nights had passed. Thank you, benefactor, for bestowing the technique. If I have any minor achievements in the future, it is all thanks to benefactor. I, Buzhou, will never forget my benefactor's great kindness. Mountain god Buzhou, who had finished his request, bowed down and said excitedly, "Fellow Taoist, you don't have to be like this. The reason why I taught fellow Taoists the technique is because of fellow Taoists' astonishing aptitude and extremely strong will. It's not because of fellow Taoists' gratitude." When the god of Buzhou Mountain heard Luo Fan's words, he could not help but feel a little conflicted. Suddenly, he gritted his teeth and knelt down. He kowtowed 3 times and said, "I admire benefactor's beauty. I'm willing to take benefactor as my master. I beg for benefactor's mercy." When Luo Fan saw the god of Buzhou Mountain kneel down, he had already expected it. When the god of Buzhou Mountain finished speaking, he sighed inwardly. As expected, he said it. We are not fated to be master and disciple. Although he admired the god of Buzhou Mountain's aptitude and temperament, Luo Fan had no intention of changing his mind. He rejected the god of Buzhou Mountain straightforwardly. The meaning behind his words was very clear. The god of Buzhou Mountain could not surpass the restrictions of the god of mountain, so it was impossible for him to take him as a disciple. When the god of Buzhou Mountain heard that, he did not understand Luo Fan's meaning. Instead, he was very happy and asked, "Benefactor, may I ask, when will the fate of master and disciple come to be?" It's useless to say more before the fated chance arrives. Once the fated chance arrives, it will be self-evident, Luo Fan said plainly. After that, he smiled and raised his hand to send the god of Buzhou Mountain off. The god of Buzhou Mountain was very disappointed. However, he could tell that Luo Fan was very determined and could not change his mind. Although he was reluctant, he could only thank him and leave. Looking at the back of the god of Buzhou Mountain's somewhat bleak and hopeful back, Luo Fan sighed inwardly. He could only wish that the god of Buzhou Mountain would become his disciple one day. Suddenly, Luo Fan's blood rushed to his head. He secretly pinched his fingers and calculated. He could not help but be pleasantly surprised. He actually comprehended it so quickly. It's really worth celebrating. Where's boy Jifeng? Thinking of this, he shouted, "Jifeng is here. Please give me your orders, master." There was a flash in the void. A simple and steady young man bowed and appeared in front of Luo Fan. Chapter 92. You go here and set up this formation. Luo Fan raised his hand and pointed. A little light flashed from his finger and went straight to the center of Jifeng Tongzi's eyebrows. Jifeng Tongzi was stunned for a moment when he got this light. He seemed to be thinking, but he immediately returned to normal. He bowed and said, "Yes, sir." After he finished speaking, Jifeng Tongzi's body turned into a silver light and suddenly rushed out. He disappeared from Luo Fan's sight in an instant. Luo Fan looked at the place where Jifeng Tongzi disappeared, but his heart was full of joy. What he had previously calculated with the help of the yin-yang test method was that Hong Jun, who was training in the 9th layer of the astral wind, lightning, and fire layer, had actually only spent a little more than 9 months to comprehend the mysteries of the 9 tribulations that Luo Fan thought would take him 3 years to comprehend. But at this moment, he had finally triggered his 9th heavenly tribulation. As long as he read through this tribulation, Hong Jun could become an earth immortal. In the end, he would achieve initial success in his magical power and become the first person after Luo Fan. How could he not be happy? The place where Luo Fan asked Jifeng Tongzi to set up the formation was where Hong Jun was going to undergo the Heaven's Tribulation. As soon as Jifeng Tongzi rushed out of Luo Fan's cave house, a seal with a radius of 10 meters suddenly rushed out from the top of Buzhou Mountain. It turned into the size of a palm and rushed down in an arc. It merged with Jifeng Tongzi in the air and turned into the silver light. That was the original body of the Jifeng seal. With the support of the original body, Jifeng Tongzi's speed suddenly increased by 10 times. In a flash, he left a faint shadow in the air and disappeared without a trace. After a short while, he appeared millions of miles away, where Hong Jun was going to undergo the Heaven's Tribulation. At this time, Hong Jun was floating in the gale, thunderbolt, and fire layer. Around his body, there were all kinds of gale, heavenly thunder, and divine fire that were so dense that they almost condensed into a substance. Moreover, at the same time, countless astral wind, lightning, and fire continued to gather from the other layers in the 9th layer. They continued to thicken and strengthen the astral wind, lightning, and fire that wrapped around Hong Jun. Countless strange life forms with crazed eyes pounced at Hong Jun from all directions at an astonishing speed. When they got close to Hong Jun, they suddenly exploded and turned into origin energy that entered Hong Jun's body. An extremely powerful, baleful aura filled an area of several hundred miles. Stronger and stronger malice was emitted from the surrounding wind, thunder, and fire towards Hong Jun. It was as if there was an infinite, terrifying attack brewing, waiting to explode when it could crush Hong Jun. Hong Jun seemed to be unaware of this. At this moment, his eyes were tightly closed, and the energy in his body surged nonstop. Waves of mysterious and indescribable aura were continuously emitted from his body, as if he was communicating with some mysterious thing in the dark. Jifeng Tongzi had already been taught by Luo Fan, so he naturally knew what to do. He didn't stop, nor did he greet Hong Jun. With a turn of his body, the silver brilliance had already turned into a square seal again. It hovered in the air between the wind, thunder, and fire layers, appearing extremely stable and heavy. Suddenly, countless lines condensed from energy rushed out of the square seal. In the blink of an eye, they densely covered an area of 1,000 miles. The lines condensed from energy were transparent and extremely condensed, as if they were cast from some kind of metal. They were extremely tough and mysterious. Each of these energy lines was as agile as a living creature. They were like spiritual snakes swimming in the air, entangling with each other. In an instant, they formed an incomparably complicated and abstruse three-dimensional pattern. This was a large formation, a square seal as the eye of the formation, using the square seal to suppress a mysterious large formation. As soon as this large formation appeared, it caused a mysterious change to occur within a radius of 1,000 miles. In an instant, the space within a 500-kilometer radius seemed to have been cut out of the primordial world, producing an inexplicable feeling. It produced an inexplicable feeling. Although this large formation was casually created by Luo Fan, with the suppression of the square seal, it also became extremely mysterious. It was only one step away from being able to split the void and achieve the supreme realm of formation space. After the formation was formed, the surrounding wind, thunder, fire, and all kinds of crazy strange life that were gathering in the area of a few hundred miles seemed to have lost their target. They collided in all directions and stayed where they were, gathering thousands or tens of thousands of miles away. Even so, more and more gathered, causing the wind, thunder, and fire around Hongjuan's body to become thicker and thicker, causing the evil spirit and malice brewing in it to become stronger and stronger. Finally, at a certain moment, the murderous aura and malice finally increased to the extreme. It suddenly gushed out and instantly turned into the most explosive attacks, pouring down on Hongjun. In the blink of an eye, the inside of the formation became a scene of great destruction, as if the world was being created and the world was collapsing. Hongjun opened his eyes, and 2 rays of light flashed. He raised his hand and clapped. A 10,000 feet long soaring serpent with a dragon head and a snake body, wrapped in mysterious clouds and mist, soared into the sky. In an instant, it twisted and completely suppressed the scene of great destruction. The endless explosive attacks calmed down in an instant. They were all twisted into source energy, which was then converted by the soaring serpent into Gue water, lightning, and cold wind. Then, they were completely absorbed by the soaring serpent, causing the surrounding area to become empty. However, the soaring serpent, which had been replenished with a huge amount of energy, did not change at all. It did not even burp, but just circled around Hongjun and roared. The astral wind, lightning, and fire were instantly twisted and absorbed. However, the baleful aura and malice did not disappear because of this. Instead, they pushed the baleful aura to the next level, even though it was impossible for them to do so. In an instant, 3 strange creatures that were larger and stronger than any of the strange creatures Hongjun had encountered were teleported by some mysterious mechanism. They appeared around Hongjun and confronted the soaring serpent. It was an evil dragon, a strange creature with 8 wings, 6 legs, and a huge mouth that exuded endless evil spirit. It was a monster with only 1 huge mouth. The power that the 3 of them emitted had already reached a level where their aura alone was enough to freeze the innate qi. They were the strongest monsters that Hongjun had encountered in the 9th level, and this was because of the great formation set up by the G-square seal. If it wasn't for the G-square seal, it wouldn't have been just 3, but 30. After all, the position that Hongjun had chosen was too dangerous. One must know that even Luo Fan himself had only gone through the heavenly tribulation in the 4th level of the Gale, lightning, and fire level. The experience at that time had already made him a little anxious. Hongjun was on the 9th level of the Gale, lightning, and fire level. The heavenly tribulation that he had triggered was definitely many times stronger than what Luo Fan had experienced. Even though Hongjun was much stronger than Luo Fan back then, he could not withstand such a terrifying heavenly tribulation. Therefore, Luo Fan had asked Jifeng Boy to set up such a large formation here to weaken the strengthening effect of the 9th level of the Gale, lightning, and fire level on the heavenly tribulation. It weakened the power of the heavenly tribulation to the limit that Hongjun could withstand. It was not too weak, so that Hongjun could not be tempered, nor could he be too strong to exceed Hongjun's limit. At that moment, the effect was indeed like that. Hongjun controlled the soaring serpent to move and close, exploding its strongest power and suppressing everything in the void. Although the 3 monsters were strong, they were not Hongjun's opponent. In the blink of an eye, they were crushed by an extraordinary invisible force and instantly turned into original energy. Then, through the birth and death of the 5 elements, they were transformed into water, lightning, and cold wind that could be directly absorbed by the soaring serpent. Then, the soaring serpent devoured them to strengthen itself. Chapter 93. In the blink of an eye, 7 days and 7 nights had passed. In the past 7 days, although Hongjun's body was constantly undergoing earth-shattering changes, allowing him to experience the obscure and mysterious great Tao that he had never experienced before. His mind, state of mind, cultivation, and realm had all experienced an unprecedented improvement. However, he still felt as if he was living in hell. This was because in the past 7 days and 7 nights, he had been enduring endless attacks that were getting stronger and stronger. All sorts of strange attacks that contained countless types of qualitative powers were constantly being produced in the surrounding void. They were getting stronger and stronger, stranger and stranger, and more targeted. This made him unable to wholeheartedly focus on the changes in his body and push the improvement in his body to the peak. This made him feel rather pained. This was also the meaning of the title. Wasn't the tribulation sent for this purpose? Fortunately, Hongjun had already stayed in this 8th tribulation realm for tens of thousands of years. His grasp of this realm had already reached a very detailed level. During this process, he had used the soaring serpent's luck to perfection. Unknowingly, he had already fused his various divine abilities into the soaring serpent, using the soaring serpent to suppress the endless power that erupted from the void. No matter how powerful the strange life or how terrifying the divine lightning of heavenly fiend was, they could not break through the soaring serpent's defense and harm his body. Although his strength and state of mind were greatly affected by this terrifying heavenly tribulation, his body was not harmed at all. During the process of Hongjuan's heavenly tribulation, Jifeng Boy had turned into a seal and was hidden in the void. He did not care about Hongjuan's situation at all. He only suppressed the formation and reduced the energy gathered in the surrounding void, weakening the power of the heavenly tribulation to the limit that Hongjun could endure. The 12,000 zhang long soaring serpent's body shuddered and suddenly pressed down. Its trajectory was heavy yet light, and it seemed to contain countless martial arts profundities. Every time it shook, it seemed to be able to evolve into a martial art that could destroy the heavens and the earth. With this shake and pressing down, almost 99% of the divine lightning of evil that was born from the void and condensed like white spiderwebs dispersed, turning into the purest heavenly energy that had expanded hundreds of thousands of times in size and filled the world. During the entire process, there was only a lychee sound, yet it seemed to contain boundless wonderful sounds, and it was filled with a profundity that caused one's mind to tremble. The white line that was suppressed by the soaring serpent was the most condensed and most powerful part of the billions of evil-slaying divine lightning bolts. In the blink of an eye, they broke through the soaring serpent suppression and crashed into its body. Black light flashed from the soaring serpent's body, and they were annihilated. Even though the soaring serpent had been destroyed, it was still shaking incessantly and was on the verge of collapsing. It took quite a while before it regained its stability. The dragon opened its mouth and swallowed all the pure heavenly astral that had exploded. With this supplement, the soaring serpent became even purer. Its grayish-green body seemed to be plated with a layer of mysterious light. It seemed transparent, but at the same time, it seemed to contain an infinite world. It was extremely mysterious. Hongjun frowned, and there was a look of extreme exhaustion on his face. The soaring serpent was almost like an incarnation of his body. His mind was condensed within the soaring serpent. When the soaring serpent fought, he fought. The soaring serpent's perception was his perception. When the soaring serpent was attacked, he was attacked. For the past 7 days and 7 nights, he had been controlling the soaring serpent to fight against the never-ending attacks that were getting stronger and stronger. This was extremely stressful for him. Even though the soaring serpent had grown to 2,000 feet over the past few days and had improved greatly, it could not withstand the adverse effects of such hard work on the control of the changes in his body. The attack just now seemed simple, but in reality, it had already reached the realm of returning to its original state. It contained endless mysteries. The trajectory of each evil-slaying divine lightning contained countless changes. It was almost as if it had its own consciousness, and it was extremely agile. The power it contained was even enough to turn a 1,000,000 feet tall mountain into nothingness. If it was before the 9 tribulations, just one such evil-slaying divine lightning would be enough to make Hongjun extremely anxious. He might even need to cut off his wrist to escape. After this wave of attack, there was no change in the void for a long time. Woo 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 woo. Just when Hong Jun thought that he had passed through the heavenly tribulation, an inexplicable sound suddenly sounded out of nowhere. The sound seemed to contain a strange attraction, causing all living beings who heard the sound to involuntarily sink into it. Their minds changed along with the rhythm and tone of the sound. As time passed, the sound became stronger and stronger, and there were more and more changes. Gradually, it seemed as if it filled the world, as if everything in the world was talking to him. When Hong Jun heard the sound, he was not attracted by the sound. Instead, he was surprised and happy. He was surprised because, according to the experience of the previous 8 tribulations and the teachings of his master, this was the sign of the arrival of the strongest heart tribulation. If he could not resist it, then his soul would be destroyed and he would die without any chance of redemption. He was happy because this was the last wave of attack of the 9th heavenly tribulation. If he could resist this attack, it would be like a fish leaping over the dragon's gate, passing through the heavenly tribulation and attaining the mysterious, earthly, immortal fruit. At this moment, all the light in the world disappeared instantly, as if there was a huge curtain covering all the light in the world. Hong Jun's consciousness inside the flying serpent instantly collapsed and returned to his sea of consciousness, causing the flying serpent to collapse in an instant. It turned into a mysterious light and went straight to Hong Jun's body, entering it in the blink of an eye. At the same time, Hong Jun's entire mind became sluggish, and his eyes became blank. The energy in his body kept surging, as if it was going to break through the barrier of his meridians and body and rush out of his body. Luo Fan, who was in the Seeking Cave on Buzhou Mountain, frowned slightly. Others could not see the reason for the change in Hong Jun's body, but Luo Fan naturally could see it. At this moment, Hong Jun looked like he was not attacked at all, but in fact his mind, and sea of consciousness had been bombarded endlessly, and he had long been submerged in the endless heavenly demons. He didn't appear. Boundless heavenly demon lord, what's your purpose? Luo Fan thought to himself. Hong Jun was Luo Fan's only disciple, so Luo Fan naturally would not be indifferent to him. Although he had already asked Jifeng Boy to set up a big formation to protect Hong Jun, he had been paying attention to Hong Jun during the process. At this moment, he sensed the attack that appeared in Hong Jun's mind, and he knew that it was some kind of heavenly demon testing and tempting Hong Jun. Hong Jun floated in that position for 2 days and 2 nights. After 2 days and 2 nights, Hong Jun's body suddenly spewed out endless black fog. The black fog condensed and transformed in midair, turning into countless strange creatures with 3 heads and 6 arms, 6 feet tall, and thousands of expressions on their faces. They filled up the area of 1,000 miles around Hong Jun's body, illuminating the originally pitch-black area with no light, making it incomparably beautiful and vivid. These strange creatures condensed by the black fog emitted all kinds of strange colors. They were very gorgeous, as if they contained all the colors of all things in the world, appearing very strange and very mysterious and incredible. After these countless strange creatures with 3 heads and 6 arms appeared, a mysterious and indescribable aura suddenly surged from Hong Jun's body. This aura became stronger and stronger, more and more obvious, and finally, it was like a scorching sun. As soon as these strange creatures were enveloped by the mist, they quickly melted away like snow being exposed to the sun. In the blink of an eye, they were reduced to bursts of invisible yet substantial gas, which then disappeared without a trace as the origin chi rippled through them. I've finally achieved the earthly immortal's Tao fruit and set foot on the door of immortality. Congratulations, congratulations. Seeing this, Luo Fan put aside his doubts about boundless heavenly demon lords not appearing, and there was an indescribable joy in his heart. Chapter 94. The Earth Immortal's Tao fruit contained the origin of life. As long as the Earth Immortal's Tao fruit existed, the origin of life would not disappear, and the cultivator would not die. When the innate gods were born in the primitive world, and the world was filled with endless innate vital chi and a huge amount of chaotic vital chi. Any loss could be replenished in a breath. As long as the innate vital chi did not disperse, there was no need to worry about death. It was equivalent to living forever in the world. Unfortunately, this kind of eternal life was determined by the environment. As long as the world was filled with innate vital chi, it would have this ability. However, if the innate vital chi in the world dissipated, it would lose the ability to live forever. At that time, any innate god would gradually age with the passage of time, his soul would gradually disperse, and he would eventually die of the mandate of heaven. Such an eternal life that was limited by the environment was naturally not true eternal life. What was the difference between a plant that was carefully protected in a greenhouse? Only by attaining the earth immortal's Tao fruit, which contained the origin of life that would never dissipate or decrease with the change of the environment, could it be said that the door to immortality had been opened and the ability to live forever could be obtained. As a teacher, Luo Fan did not need any reason to be happy when he saw his disciple could have such an achievement. The aura on Hongjuan's body became stronger and stronger, and it became more and more obvious. At a certain moment, it suddenly disappeared. As the aura disappeared, he also opened his eyes that had been closed for 2 days and 2 nights. Although the ability of the heavenly demon was strange and powerful, Hongjuan's Tao-seeking heart was extremely firm. It was natural for him to defeat the heavenly demon and pass the heart tribulation. After being tempered by the heart tribulation, Hongjuan's will became more and more firm, and his understanding of his own pursuit became clearer. After opening his eyes, Hongjuan's eyes were filled with an uncontrollable ecstasy, and he shouted, "After working hard for hundreds of thousands of years, I finally succeeded. Happy, happy." After he finished speaking, a mysterious vitality that contained infinite mysteries surged out of his body. With a thought, the sky that originally covered the sky and turned the whole world into darkness suddenly tore apart. In the blink of an eye, the sun shone, and the world became bright. The sunlight combined with the vitality emitted from his body, and it seemed that the whole world became alive. At this moment, Hongjuan's aura was not as powerful and mysterious as Luo Fan's when he passed the heaven tribulation and achieved the Tao fruit, but it was only slightly weaker. It also contained infinite mysteries and was full of indescribable mysteries. Every movement of it seemed to be evolving some kind of Tao between heaven and Tao. Ordinary people could understand some kind of transcendence of cultivation method just by watching it. Of Tao, even his every movement could bring endless power. This tribulation, from beginning to end, lasted for 9 days and 9 nights. During these 9 days and 9 nights, Hongjuan's mind had not been able to rest at all. The changes in his body had not stopped for even a moment. When he transcended the heavenly tribulation and wiped out the sky full of heavenly demons, the changes in his body were also completed. At that instant, the technique of Fortune Jade Archive was pushed to the 9th level of perfection. At the same time, the energy within his body completed a transformation that lasted for over a period of time, transforming into a strand of magic power that was formed from 12,000 profound and profound three-dimensional talismans. Within his dantian, it condensed into a ball of tiny, earthly, immortal Tao fruit that ceaselessly pulsated and expanded like a bizarre fruit. Although this Tao fruit was 10 times smaller than Luo Fan's Tao fruit and was only the size of a pigeon's egg, the mysteries within it were not reduced at all. It was formed by the gathering of mysterious magical power. It could be gathered into a Tao fruit, and it could be dispersed in a magical power. It also had an extremely mysterious connection with the sea of consciousness and the spirit. It contained the origin of life and had infinite power. And the three-dimensional talisman that formed his magical power unit was in the form of a jade archive formed by 129,600 jade slips. On each jade archive, there were incomparably complicated and mysterious words and pictures. From birth until now, Hongjun had comprehended all kinds of cultivation methods, incantations, magical powers, and magical powers that he had obtained from Luo Fan. These words and pictures were constantly changing, collapsing, and recombining. Every time they collapsed and recombined, there would be a slight change. This made these cultivation methods, incantations, magical powers, and magical powers more and more mysterious, and more suitable for him. These three-dimensional talismans in the form of the Creation Jade Archive actually had the ability to automatically deduce cultivation methods. However, at this stage, Hongjun's respect for Luo Fan became firmer. His respect for Luo Fan grew deeper and deeper in his heart, because no matter how the words and pictures on his Creation Jade Archive changed, collapsed, and recombined, the cultivation methods that Luo Fan had taught him did not change at all. Whether it was the true martial spirit transformation technique, the indomitable spirit technique, or the Creation Jade Archive technique, or even the various magical tool refining methods that Luo Fan had casually created and imparted to him, it was the same. Obviously, the cultivation methods and magical powers that Luo Fan had taught him had reached the realm that was most suitable for him. At least, it had reached the limit that his current magical power could deduce. The power of the magical power unit would naturally be reflected on the Earth Immortal's Tao fruit. Almost at every moment, around the Earth Immortal's Tao fruit, there were countless words and pictures that seemed to be floating in the void. They constantly moved, floated, and were swallowed and changed by the Earth Immortal's Tao fruit. Although the magical power unit was still extremely empty and seemed to need endless energy to be replenished to be complete, Hongjun's strength was already a world of difference from 9 days ago. That difference allowed Hongjun to stand at the same place and let himself attack 9 days ago. Just the protection of the aura emitted by the Earth Immortal's Tao fruit was enough to protect him completely. The energy in his body had such a change, but his sea of consciousness had also undergone an extremely huge change. That sea of consciousness could no longer be called a sea of consciousness, but should be called a sea of consciousness world. Its area had expanded to a radius of 4,900 miles, and its height had increased to a height of 490 miles. Compared to the previous area that could only be measured by a football field, it had already obtained an essential sublimation. The entire ground of the Sea of Consciousness was undulating, and the terrain was similar. It was the terrain from where Luo Fan was to Buzhou Mountain. It just seemed to have shrunk a lot. In the middle of the Sea of Consciousness, Hongjun's spirit had already undergone an incomparably huge change. It turned into an incomparably heroic shadow of a strong man. His feet stepped on the ground, and his hands supported the sky above the Sea of Consciousness world. It was like Pangu supporting the world. Around his body, the connate, inextinguishable spiritual light turned into a belt of light, like a dragon, constantly swimming around his body, as if it was very attached. After all these years of nourishment and refinement, this connate, inextinguishable spiritual light had already been deeply imprinted by Hongjun's imprint and was gradually assimilated by it. Understanding the changes in his body, Hongjun was even more satisfied. Suddenly, he let out a long roar towards the sky. This long roar rose and fell gently, as if it was condensed in the void. Wave after wave of the roar overlapped and pushed forward. In the end, this long roar was like an earth-shattering roar, stirring up the spiritual chi of the void and spreading far away. Chapter 95. After howling for a long time, Hongjun had almost completely vented the joy in his heart, and he gradually stopped his movements that were slightly out of composure. Moreover, even if he stopped, the melodious howl he emitted earlier didn't stop because of this. Instead, it seemed as if it was a real object that remained in the sky, and it still surged with vitality. It gathered together and didn't disperse, and the profound and melodious sound caused others to be unable to bear to look away. However, his voice still lingered in the ears for 3 days. The road ahead is long, yet I've only just started. After his joy, Hong Jun gradually understood the exact location he was at. Hong Jun's state of mind gradually calmed down as he looked towards the surroundings. The extraordinary perception ability he obtained from attaining the earthly immortal Tao fruit allowed him to instantly notice the countless lines of energy that were concealed in space that covered an area of 500 kilometers in the surroundings. With a command of his mind, a boundlessly profound grand formation was reflected in his mind within an area of 500 kilometers. After attaining the earthly immortal Tao fruit, the range of Hongjuan's perception ability could already reach an area of 1,500 kilometers, and an area of 500 kilometers was only a short distance to him. With just a glance, he understood in his heart that this grand formation was surely created by his master, yet its might was for protection. At this point, he finally understood in his heart that his 9 tribulation was able to go so smoothly with the protection of his master, and an indescribable feeling of admiration surged within his heart. In midair, he bowed towards the concealed area of the seal, the core of the formation, and said, "Thank you, Senior, for protecting me. Hong Jun is extremely grateful. This is Master's order. You don't have to be grateful." Jifeng Tong was rather autonomous, and he did not respond to Hong Jun's gratitude just because Luo Fan didn't have any instructions. His voice seemed to be immature, yet seemed to be filled with boundless dignity. It drifted over from nowhere and filled the heavens and the earth in an area of 500 kilometers. Even if Hong Jun already knew that he was suppressing the core of the Grand Formation, he was still unable to find out where the voice came from. After this round of observation, he couldn't help but feel even more shocked towards this existence that was protecting him, and he even felt that the gap between him and his master had truly reached an unfathomable level. After Jifeng Boy finished his words, he didn't show up to meet Hong Jun. He just controlled the Jifeng seal and took back all the energy lines within 1,000 miles. Then he turned it again and rushed to Buzhou Mountain in a silver light, disappearing from the range of Hong Jun's improved perception. Even though the Boy of Wisdom was only a magic treasure that hadn't been completed for long, and its might was reduced greatly because no one was controlling it, it was refined by Luo Fan after all. All of its consciousness, wisdom, and divine abilities came from Luo Fan, so its might was naturally not something that Hong Jun, who just attained the earthly immortal Tao fruit, could compare to. Thus, this series of actions completely exceeded Hong Jun's perception. It was like an antelope hanging its horn, causing Hong Jun to be unable to grasp it at all. The actions of this expert made Hong Jun admire him. I wonder who this senior is. Why have I never seen him before? Hong Jun thought to himself. His figure flashed and turned into a long rainbow with a hint of green in it. He looked at Buzhou Mountain and flew quickly. Under the protection of his master, he passed the heavenly tribulation and attained the Tao fruit, so it was reasonable for him to see his master and report his achievements. After turning into a long rainbow and flying straight, Hong Jun truly felt the improvement after attaining the Tao fruit. His flying speed was more than 10 times faster than before, and he still had strength left. It seemed that as long as he slightly changed his cultivation method, he would be able to unleash an even faster speed. In the process of flying, there was a kind of fusion with heaven and earth. He could fly with the help of the invisible power that the heaven and earth possessed, and the consumption of energy was much less than before. Soon, Hong Jun arrived at Buzhou Mountain. As soon as the long rainbow landed, it condensed in the Seeking Cave. Hong Jun did not disappoint Master. After spending tens of thousands of years, I finally attained the Earth Immortal Tao fruit. I hope Master can grant me an audience. Hong Jun did not have the slightest bit of reservation after becoming an itinerant immortal. He prostrated on the ground and shouted loudly, "Come in." Luo Fan had been waiting in the Seeking Cave for a long time. He smiled and said. Hong Jun thanked him and entered. When he entered, Hong Jun saw Luo Fan's smiling and peaceful face. He felt an indescribable sense of closeness and admiration. The emotions that he had suppressed for a long time gushed out. His face was covered in tears as he kowtowed again and sobbed. I have troubled Master all these years. It is all thanks to Master that I have achieved so much today. Attaining the Earth Immortal Tao fruit represented a great achievement. It represented opening the door to longevity and greatly improving one's cultivation. However, it did not suppress one's emotions, which was why Hong Jun had such a performance. Luo Fan could not help but feel emotional when Hong Jun bowed to him like this. There was an indescribable joy in his heart. He stood up to help Hong Jun up and sized him up. He only knew to smile and nod, saying that he was not bad. After a long time, Luo Fan calmed down first and said, Hong Jun, my disciple, now that you've attained the Earth Immortal Tao fruit, you have some achievements. However, you must know that the great Tao is boundless. You cannot slack off at all. I know. I won't dare to slack off at all. Hong Jun nodded seriously. Now that you've attained the Tao Immortal Realm, you have the right to set up your own sect. However, it's not good for you to continue living in the Seeking Cave. You can choose a place to open up a cave abode and come see me after stabilizing your realm. I have something to say to you, Luo Fan said. This, I understand. Hong Jun was originally unwilling to move out of the Seeking Cave and set up his own sect, but Luo Fan's authority had already penetrated deep into his bones. He could not resist and could only agree. Seeing that Hong Jun agreed, Luo Fan was very satisfied and waved his hand to let Hong Jun go. Hong Jun bowed, turned around, and left the Seeking Cave abode. With Hong Jun's ability to attain the Earth Immortal Tao fruit, it was naturally not difficult for him to open up a cave abode. There was no need for any preparation. With a thought, his body scattered and condensed, turning into a gray ray of light that fell straight down. In the blink of an eye, he landed more than 400 miles below the Seeking Cave, just close to the edge where Luo Fan controlled the top of Buzhou Mountain. He reformed into Hong Jun's figure. After observing for a while, he nodded and waved his hand gently. A soaring serpent that was 30 meters long rushed out of his hand and drilled into the mountain rocks. As it drilled, the mountain rocks in front of Hong Jun surged. Soon, a cave abode that was a few times smaller than the Seeking Cave opened up. Purple Cloud. The moment this cave abode was formed, these two words suddenly appeared in Hong Jun's mind. Hong Jun did not think too much. In an instant, he imprinted the two words on the top of the cave abode. The moment the two words Purple Cloud were imprinted on the top of the cave abode suddenly shook slightly. There seemed to be a mysterious aura coming from it, causing the power of the cave abode to approach the Seeking Cave that Luo Fan had opened up. These two words, Purple Cloud, seemed to have a great connection with me. Hong Jun's heart skipped a beat as he came to this realization. However, although he understood it, it was only a thought. After a flash, Hong Jun did not think too much about it. He took a step into the depths of the cave abode and sat cross-legged. He began to slowly circulate the magic power in his body. As he absorbed the endless chaotic primordial chi, he slowly purified the magic power in his body. Chapter 96. In the primordial world, thousands of years had almost no meaning. In the blink of an eye, another 100 years had passed. At this moment, Luo Fan was refining his Dharma power in the cave abode. He suddenly opened his eyes and looked outside. At the same time, a yellow light rushed into his cave abode. It landed in front of him and condensed into a pink and jade-like boy. It was the limitless boy who had left for 100 years. Fortunately, I did not disappoint you. I have already perfectly completed the setting of the 12 tests. The limitless boy bowed and said. Luo Fan's mind moved, and the memory of the limitless boy for the past 100 years unfolded in his mind. In an instant, he knew what the limitless boy had done in the past 100 years. Setting up 12 tests and hiding 12 spells was naturally not difficult for the limitless boy who had made a magic treasure. He only needed a few days or even a few hours to do it perfectly. The reason why it took 100 years was that the limitless boy strived for perfection. Every time, he would hide at the side and watch the woman who was going to be tested accept the test. Then, he would go to another location to set up the test. This way, the limitless boy could ensure that the test he set up could be completed and not turn the test into killing. Knowing this, Luo Fan already understood that the woman had already passed the last test and was close to Buzhou Mountain. In a while, she would arrive in front of him. The limitless boy was a treasure spirit without self-consciousness. There was no need for any praise or encouragement. Luo Fan was not that bored. He just nodded and said directly, "You continue to temper your body." The limitless boy bowed, turned around, and turned into a purple-yellow light that rushed out. In the blink of an eye, he went to the top of Buzhou Mountain and turned into the void. The limitless palace sank down, thousands of miles away from the square seal, and sank into the liquid, chaotic, primordial chi. Luo Fan's mind moved slightly and connected to the Dharma power unit that was left on the woman to guide her. He instantly saw the situation around the woman clearly. After 100 years of trekking, passing 12 tests, and obtaining 12 magic arts, the woman was very different from the last time Luo Fan saw her. Her eyes were still clear, but there was something called persistence in them. There was a look of enlightenment on her face, and the aura she exuded was more than 10 times stronger than 100 years ago. 100 years had affected her greatly. At this moment, she was stepping out of a huge valley. As she stepped out, the valley suddenly collapsed, and endless stone fragments and dust filled the air. However, the moment they got close to her, they were repelled by an invisible force, unable to affect her body. Another spell? It seems to be the art of so close, yet worlds apart. This is great. I can finally meet that great divine ability sooner. Over the years, I've encountered 12 tests and obtained 12 magic arts. They must have given me a test. My performance should be all right. I hope I can successfully acknowledge him as my master. After she finished speaking, she clenched her fists, and the determination in her eyes became even stronger. After a while, she raised her hand and waved. An extremely complicated spherical, three-dimensional talisman rushed out of her palm and instantly enveloped the area around her. This spherical three-dimensional talisman was made up of energy lines that were as small as spider silk, but they were so dense that they were like a closed silk cocoon, making it impossible for people to see the internal state of the spherical three-dimensional talisman from the outside. Then, an indescribable suction force suddenly erupted. The primordial chi within a radius of 100 miles was like iron filings attracted by a magnet. It was madly thrown toward the three-dimensional talisman, forming a huge primordial chi whirlpool around it. In the process of entering the three-dimensional talisman, the primordial chi was constantly compressed, condensed, and purified. Gradually, it was transformed into wisps of primordial chi of chaos. Although the amount of primordial chi that was condensed and purified was not much, it was still comparable to a small source of primordial chi of chaos. It was naturally far from enough to support the cultivation of Luo Fan and Hong Jun, but it was more than enough for the woman who only had the most basic cultivation method. She opened her small mouth and swallowed the wisps of primordial chi that were thrown toward her, as if she was swallowing nectar. Then, through the circulation of the cultivation method, it was continuously transformed into the mysterious energy in her meridians. This three-dimensional talisman was one of the 12 magic arts that she had obtained after going through all these years of tests. It was also the first one. It was a magic art that could assist in cultivation, and its name was very grand. It was called the chaotic space technique. But in fact, it could only condense primordial chi, and it could condense a huge amount of primordial chi together, return it to the origin, and transform it into primordial chi of chaos. After absorbing the wisps of primordial chi, the woman suddenly opened her eyes. Countless complicated words and patterns flashed in her eyes. Then, she raised her hand and waved gently. Wisps of mysterious energy were instantly released from her hand. They gradually condensed in the air, gradually twisted and entangled, and slowly turned into a mysterious three-dimensional talisman. This mysterious three-dimensional talisman was shaped like a ruler. It rotated in front of her and gradually turned from the original colorless color to a yellow color, shining brightly. As her hands continued to move, and as more and more energy lines were added, the three-dimensional talisman in the shape of a ruler became more and more dense and complete. Suddenly, when she finished her last move, the ruler burst out with a burst of earthy yellow light, illuminating the area that was surrounded by the 3D talisman. Then, it suddenly rushed straight into her lower dantian, turning into the 11th three-dimensional talisman in her lower dantian. It's finally done. When the three-dimensional talisman in the shape of a ruler returned to her dantian, the woman opened her eyes and the corners of her mouth curled up. She said in a very cute manner. Then, she raised her hand and waved. The three-dimensional talisman, which covered an area of 10,000 miles and absorbed the endless primordial chi in the surroundings to condense into primordial chi, suddenly shrank and turned into the 12th three-dimensional talisman in her dantian. The endless primordial chi in the surroundings continued to rush over due to habit, colliding with each other, creating a wave of primordial chi visible to the naked eye. With a single thought, countless mysterious lines suddenly flashed around her body. Then, she took a step forward, causing the void to distort slightly. Her figure had already disappeared on the spot. When she reappeared, she was already thousands of miles away. This was the effect of the imminent skyline technique. And this was because the woman's cultivation level was not high enough. If this woman's cultivation level could be raised to the point of triggering a heavenly tribulation, then this step would not only be thousands of miles, but tens of thousands of miles. If she could become an earthly immortal, then this step would be at least 300,000 miles. With the help of such a practical imminent skyline technique, it only took a short while for the woman to arrive at the foot of Buzhou Mountain, which was the location indicated by the three-dimensional talisman that described Buzhou Mountain. This magic art is very good, but it consumes too much energy. The woman stopped moving. Her face was slightly pale, and she was panting heavily as she secretly lamented. However, her eyes were filled with excitement and anticipation. I wonder what that great divination looks like. Chapter 97. Needless to say, the scenery of Buzhou Mountain was magnificent and mysterious. Even if the woman was filled with anticipation for the great divinity and wanted nothing more than to appear in front of him in the next moment, she couldn't help but be attracted by the scenery of Mount Buzhou. She kept stopping and walking. If it wasn't for her strong will, she wouldn't have wanted to leave. "Hey, little sister, who are you? What are you doing in Buzhou Mountain?" At this moment, the woman was amazed by the trihelix vortex formed by the chaotic energy. Suddenly, she heard a clear and joyful voice coming from behind her. The woman couldn't help but be surprised. Although her strength was much weaker than that of Luo Fan and Hong Jun, she had cultivated for a long time after all. In addition, after passing the 12 tests, she had become very vigilant. She was almost always aware of the situation around her. But before this voice appeared, she didn't feel anything at all. How could she not be surprised? Nervously turning around, she saw a cute child of about 12 or 13 years of age standing there with a cute pair of scissors in his hand. He was dressed in red and green children's clothes. "Little sister," the woman twitched her mouth. Although she was naive and ignorant, she had traveled in the untainted land for more than 100 years. She still knew the basic knowledge. "No matter what, you have to call me big sister, right?" Although she had passed the 12 tests, the woman didn't change. What she thought in her heart was what she said. "Haha, don't look at me because I'm small. I also saw Pangu create the world and absorb the first wisp of vitality in the untainted land to grow. Don't be fooled by your big size. In terms of age, you are definitely not as old as me." The child was very proud. The child was Luo Fu. For Luo Fu, who had played alone for tens of thousands of years, more than 100 years was not a big problem. He didn't want to disturb Luo Fan, who was wholeheartedly cultivating because of the boredom of 100 years. Therefore, for more than 100 years, he had been wandering around with the golden flood dragon scissors transformed by Ao Lai and Ao In. He was quite happy. "Really? It doesn't look like it. If you really have such a powerful background, how can your strength be so low?" The woman very honestly said what she was thinking. Although Luo Fu had some strength, his innate starting point was relatively low. At this moment, he was even weaker than this woman. Naturally, she could see through him at a glance. Yumf, I'm not going to argue with you. I'm going to call you little sister. Sister, sister, sister. This woman was so straightforward that Luo Fu couldn't find any words to quibble with, so he could only act shamelessly. You're shameless. The woman continued to speak her mind very straightforwardly. You're cheating. Although Luo Fu looked to be only 12 or 13 years old, his mental development was not weak. He could not help but feel helpless towards this woman's straightforwardness. When Luo Fu said that he had seen Pengu create heaven and earth and absorbed the first wisp of vitality of the untainted world, he was not completely boasting. He was previously an invisible talisman ghost, condensed from the endless heavy and turbid yin qi in the yellow spring. Through the inheritance of this heavy and turbid yin qi, he could obtain a little bit of the scene when the untainted world was created. The heavy and turbid yin qi was originally one of the innumerable types of vitality that were created when the untainted world was created, so it could be regarded as the first wisp of vitality of the untainted world. Sister, what are you doing in Buzhou Mountain? This is my territory. Luo Fu decided to bypass the question of how to address her and asked the second woman he had met in his life. The woman didn't know what deception was, so she directly said, I'm here to find a powerful expert. Before I took human form, he left a promise in my spiritual sense, saying that I'm here to find him and worship him as my master. As she spoke, she opened her palm, revealing the three-dimensional talisman in the shape of Buzhou Mountain. Ah, Father. Luo Fu recognized the three-dimensional talisman as Luo Fan's magic power unit and was shocked. Crack, crack. Two crisp sounds rang out, and the chiffon scissors in Luo Fu's hand suddenly collapsed, turning into two streams of black and white air. They fell to the ground and condensed into a man and a woman with horns on their heads. They were the two dragons, Ao Lai and Ao Yin, were cultivating the Golden Flood Dragon Transformation Tao. This power is so high, it must be Master. Young Master, this person was called by Master, so there's no mistaking it. Young Master, you shouldn't obstruct him too much. Ao Lai had sensed the aura emitted by Luo Fan's magic power unit and had woken up from his cultivation state. After landing on the ground, he lowered his head and spoke to Luo Fu. What a strange person. The woman's eyes were clear, and there was some surprise in her mouth. Little sister, this mark of yours is our master's power unit, so you must have come to Buzhou Mountain to find our master. This is our master's son, young Master Luo Fu, and this is my cultivation partner, Ao Lai. I'm called Ao Yin, and I'm Master's guardian beast. How should I address you, little sister? Ao Yin said to the woman with a smile. Ah, so you guys have such a close relationship with my future master. My name is Guang Pu. You guys must bring me to my future master. Please, please. This girl's heart was pure, and her senses were sharp. She instinctively felt that what Ao Yin said was the truth. She immediately clasped her hands together in front of her chest and made a very cute, pleading gesture. So you want to be my father's disciple? Then you must be my junior sister. So I was right to call you little sister. Luo Fu thought for a while and said happily. In the cave, Luo Fan couldn't just sit there and wait for the woman called Guang Pu to come up. With a thought entered the hearts of Luo Fu, Ao Lai, Ao Yin, and Guang Pu through his mind-reading ability. After becoming a true immortal, Luo Fan's divine ability had become even more profound. As long as there was a bit of power or aura as a guide, it would be effective within 1,000,000 miles. The four of you, come up to the cave. I have something to say to you. Luo Fan's voice sounded as if it was whispering in their ears, causing Luo Fu and the others to be startled. Following that, a look of joy appeared on their faces, but the joy they felt was different. Ao Lai was the most prudent, and he said to the other three, Master has already called for us. We can't delay. Since Luo Fan had already spoken, Luo Fu didn't dare to be mischievous. He nodded and waved his hand. A white light shone from his body, instantly condensing into a 3-meter-tall white tiger beside him. Luo Fu mounted the white tiger and turned to Guangpu with a smile. "Little sister, do you want to come up and walk with me?" Sure, sure. Guangpu didn't know the meaning of courtesy. She was already very interested in seeing such a mysterious white tiger, and she cried out in joy. She jumped onto the tiger's back without any hesitation and wrapped her arms around Luo Fu's waist. Her straightforwardness caused Luo Fu to be at a loss, but a short while later, a joyful smile appeared on his face. When Ao Yin and Ao Lai saw this, they didn't hesitate either. Their figures scattered, gathered, and condensed back into the chiffon scissors, which fell into Luo Fu's hand. Luo Fu activated the magic tool, and the white tiger flew up toward the top of Buzhou Mountain at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared without a trace. Chapter 98. After a short while, the white tiger drew a white line through the air and landed in front of the seeking cave. His entire movement was light and carefree to the extreme. It formed a sharp contrast with the fact that he was moving at an extremely fast speed, and it caused people to be even more shocked. After landing on the ground, Guangpu's expression was a little sluggish, and her eyes were filled with shock. "Ow, how can he be so fast? This is at least 10 times faster than my imminent skyline." With her imminent skyline technique, she would naturally be able to reach the seeking cave quickly, but it would take at least 10 times longer, and she would have to expend close to 90% of her energy to do so. Luo Fu looked at Guangpu in shock, and he was extremely pleased with himself as he laughed heartily. "Of course, this is a magic tool that my dad specially refined for me. How can any little divine ability or magic arts compare to this? So this is a magic tool refined by my future master. That's great." Guangpu's expression returned to normal, and her eyes were shining brightly. "Come on, future junior sister, hurry up and come in with me. My dad must be anxious waiting for us." Luo Fu smiled. After saying that, he grabbed Guangpu's hand and ran toward the cave abode. After entering the cave abode, the two of them felt a majestic and intimate aura wash over them, and they felt their moods become calm. Ao Lai and Ao Yin, who had transformed into the Chi version golden WIRM scissors, didn't dare to maintain their golden WIRM scissors form anymore. They shook in unison, and in the blink of an eye, they turned into 2 rays of light, one black and one white, and they landed on the ground to form a dragon man and a dragon woman. Immediately, a yellow scarf warrior came forward and led them to where Luo Fan was. Seeing Luo Fu's adorable appearance, Luo Fan felt a sense of closeness in his heart, and he smiled as he said, "Fu-er, have you had fun all these years?" At the same time, he nodded to Ao Lai and Ao Yin. Proud Lai and Proud Yin bowed respectfully, then transformed into a pair of golden WIRM scissors that flew into Luo Fu. Ignoring Ao Yin and Ao Lai's actions, Luo Fu pursed his lips and said to Luo Fan, "It's not fun. Dad, you won't even accompany me." "Ha, you little brat, messing around. This Buzhou Mountain has long been in a mess because of you. When was it not me who cleaned up after you? How dare you have any opinions?" Luo Fan lightly flicked his finger, and a soft sound rang out. Luo Fu covered his forehead and cried out in dissatisfaction. "Your name is Guangpu?" Luo Fan smiled and turned to ask Guangpu. "Yes." Guangpu has obeyed the summons. "I beg the great immortal to accept me as his disciple." Guangpu knelt down in excitement and shouted. Luo Fan faintly smiled and raised his hand. The talisman tattoo on Guangpu's palm separated from her palm and grew in the wind. It turned into a 10 feet large image of Buzhou Mountain. It floated above Guangpu's head, exuding a grayish-brown light. When I comprehended the Hercules summoning art and the restriction refining method from you, I made a promise that if you were willing, you could worship me as your master. Since you were able to cross all the obstacles to come here, I won't go back on my word." Luo Fan grasped the air, and the 3-dimensional talisman tattoo in the shape of Buzhou Mountain instantly collapsed. It turned into specks of transparent energy, and its volume increased by 10,000 times. This 10,000 times increase in volume was already larger than the cave dwelling, but it didn't seem crowded in the cave dwelling. It also didn't make people feel uncomfortable. It was very mysterious. The energy shook a few times, then sank down and rushed into the woman's body. Guang Pu greets Master. May Master be immortal. Guang Pu was overjoyed. She didn't care about the energy. She prostrated herself on the ground and kowtowed to Luo Fan 9 times. Luo Fan nodded. With a thought, the energy that entered Guang Pu's body gathered in her dantian in the blink of an eye. It rushed into the talisman tattoo that Guang Pu had obtained in the past 100 years. In an instant, the 12 rays of light rushed out from Guang Pu's dantian. These rays of light were all gray, but they were different from each other, each containing their own mysteries. After these rays of light emerged, they rushed straight to the top of Guang Pu's head. They constantly intertwined and fused 3 feet above her head. Gradually, they condensed into a kind of gray light that was like chaos, but it contained endless mysteries. At the same time, the 12 talisman tattoo in her lower abdomen gradually collapsed and reorganized, fused into a ball, and then suddenly exploded, turning into countless extremely complicated characters and patterns. In an instant, they rushed straight into the Niwen between her eyebrows. Through some mysterious mechanism, they entered the silvery white sea of consciousness. Guang Pu's sea of consciousness was not big. It was only the size of a basketball court. In the middle of the sea of consciousness that was the size of a basketball court, there was a giant tree that supported the sky and the earth. That was her divine soul. After these complicated characters and patterns entered the sea of consciousness, they instantly filled the entire sea of consciousness, making the entire sea of consciousness become densely packed with characters and patterns. There was almost no empty inch. These characters and patterns suddenly rushed straight into the giant tree that supported the sky and the earth, causing the branches and leaves of the giant tree to shake rapidly, and the entire sea of consciousness seemed to shake with it. Just as these characters and patterns completely entered Guang Pu's divine soul, above her head, the gray light suddenly sank down. In the blink of an eye, it had already integrated into her body, causing her body to gradually light up with a faint gray light. Guang Pu's whole body was sluggish, and there seemed to be countless characters and patterns flashing in her eyes. It was a cultivation method, a super powerful cultivation method that contained all the power of the 12 cultivation methods, and could directly raise her cultivation level. Seeing that Guang Pu's entire mind was immersed in the cultivation method, Luo Fan raised his hand and waved gently. A mysterious large formation covered Guang Pu in it. Endless chaotic yuan qi isolated all sound and light from the outside world. Dad, this is my little junior sister, right? Luo Fu had been holding back for a long time. At this time, when he saw Luo Fan raise his hand to cover Guang Pu with a large formation, he finally couldn't help but ask. Luo Fan smiled and said, "She should be your senior sister." "No way. I won't be the senior brother," Luo Fu shouted discontentedly. As he spoke, he had already climbed onto Luo Fan's Kong, sat cross-legged beside Luo Fan, and stared at Luo Fan very discontentedly. This Guang Pu is an innate god. Her spiritual consciousness was born when the world was created. Although she has only taken human form for more than 100 years, her background is much nobler than yours. Whether it is age or cultivation, she is not someone you can compare with. How dare you call her sister? Luo Fan said with a smile. I have a more noble father. Luo Fu paused for a moment and said shamelessly, "You?" Luo Fan smiled helplessly and raised his hand to rub Luo Fu's head. "Fu, how long has it been since your core was formed?" After a long time, Luo Fan put down his hand and asked, "More than 10,000 years." "Dad, why are you asking this?" Luo Fu thought for a moment and said, "It has been more than 10,000 years. Time really flies." Luo Fan sighed and looked up. It was as if he could see the endless starry sky above the layers of mountain rocks. His heart was filled with infinite emotions. Dad, am I very useless? Luo Fu suddenly became a little depressed and asked, Huh? Why do you think so? Luo Fan was stunned and lowered his head to look at Luo Fu. Hong Jun is a senior brother and is already an itinerant immortal. Uncle Ao Lai and Annie Ao Een are also much stronger than me. Now, even junior sister Guang Pu is stronger than me. Dad, you have taught me so much, but I am still so weak. Am I not very useless? Luo Fu lowered his head and said very dejectedly, So you're talking about this, silly boy. When Luo Fan heard this, he could not help but laugh and rub Luo Fu's head hard. Dad, I'm talking to you very seriously. Luo Fu was furious and pushed Luo Fan's hand away. Chapter 99. The postscript at the end of the chapter is very important. Please read it. I didn't expect that you Fu have grown up. Luo Fan smiled for a while and said to Luo Fu with some emotion. Luo Fu was confused. Being able to find out where you're not as good as others and your weakness proves that you are no longer a child who is addicted to your own world. In this way, I can rest assured and make arrangements. Luo Fan slightly smiled, his expression somewhat solemn. Dad, what arrangements do you have? Can you help me beat senior brother Hong Jun quickly? Luo Fu shouted with joy. Luo Fan smiled and said, Of course not. What's the point? Luo Fu couldn't help but feel depressed. You just said that you have matured. I didn't expect you to be so childish now. Luo Fan smiled and said, In this world, the birth of any living being is something that cannot be chosen. Some living beings are born much higher than other living beings. They can achieve great things with just a little effort. But some living beings are born much weaker than other living beings. They need tens or hundreds of times more effort to achieve the same things as ordinary living beings. No one can avoid this difference. Fu, you were once a formless talisman ghost, and you're just one of the billions and billions of formless talisman ghosts in the Yellow Springs. Like Hong Jun, Guang Pu, Ao Lai, and Ao Een, they were innate gods that were born from the chaotic energy, and they were blessed by the heaven and earth. They were born with Pangu's primordial spirit, and were born with great abilities. Compared to them, you are like the difference between heaven and earth. Such a difference in birth has already determined that there is an insurmountable gap between you in terms of talent and power. You will need to work millions of times harder than them to catch up. This is just a theoretical analysis. The reality is that Hong Jun and the others will not relax. It is already rare for you to work as hard as them. They will not let you fall behind by millions of times. So, the gap between the two of you will only get bigger and bigger, Luo Fan said indifferently. By now, Luo Fu already knew that Luo Fan definitely had something to say. Although he was a little dispirited, he still listened to Luo Fan's analysis seriously, nodding his head repeatedly and saying yes repeatedly. Because of this, I created the Origin Core Soul sculpting technique for you, so as to reconstruct your origin and give you a chance to change your birth. If you want to use it to catch up with your senior brother Hong Jun and the others, you have to cultivate this cultivation method to perfection first. Luo Fan saw that Luo Fu had listened to him and continued to say with relief, The Origin Core Soul sculpting technique was a cultivation method that Luo Fan had specially created for Luo Fu. However, Luo Fu was not the only one who could cultivate it. For living beings who are not innate gods, this cultivation method was even more precious than an innate, inextinguishable spiritual light. This was because this cultivation method had the ability to reconstruct the origin of living beings and return from the acquired to the innate. In other words, it had the ability to turn postnatal living beings into innate gods. This kind of nature-defying ability was enough to make any postnatal living beings crazy. The Origin Core Soul sculpting technique was divided into 6 realms: Qi refining, core formation, godly fire, return to nature, crossing adversity, and earth immortal. The 2 realms of Qi refining and core formation were not very mysterious. They were the two realms of absorbing innate vitality and chaotic vitality, refining them and turning them into their own energy. They were the two realms of constantly using this energy to refine the body and the divine soul. Although the efficiency of absorbing and using energy was extremely high, and the power was extremely strong, it was only ordinary. Other cultivation methods could barely achieve this. However, starting from the godly fire realm, the essence of this cultivation method was where the essence of this cultivation method lay. The divine flame realm was to merge a living being's acquired soul into the primordial core formed from the core formation. And then, through all kinds of mysterious transformations, the primordial core would explode in the end, igniting a divine flame that would burn the soul and refine the body. In this realm, the godly fire would be extremely vigorous. Finally, the divine soul would be reassembled, and the body would explode and reassemble, allowing the cultivator to cultivate the innate divine soul and innate body. When cultivating to this realm, the godly fire would be infinitely close to the innate divine soul of an innate God, and the cultivator's body would also be infinitely close to the innate God's body. The following realms were the tribulation crossing and the earth immortal realms. It was the process of seeking the fruit of Tao, and finally obtaining the fruit of Tao and becoming an individual immortal. That was the cultivation process after becoming an innate God. These 6 realms were orderly, but they had clearly planned the path for postnatal living beings to return to the innate God so that the originally unchangeable birth could be changed. However, it was obvious that this kind of cultivation technique, which allowed a post-celestial creature to return to its natural state and become a supreme innate God, was heaven-defying. It was much more difficult and complicated than any of the cultivation techniques Luo Fan had created before. Even the difficulty and complexity of the nameless cultivation technique that he was cultivating could not be compared to the nameless cultivation technique. According to the current cultivation speed of Luo Fu, it would probably take him thousands of yuan hui to return to the innate God and become an innate God. The reason why he could cultivate to the core formation realm within 1 yuan hui was that Luo Fan had accumulated countless treasures of heaven and earth in this yuan hui. The chaotic pneuma is indispensable for the cultivation of innate God. Without the chaotic pneuma, the cultivation speed of innate God is not even comparable to that of some postnatal living beings with good aptitudes. The chaotic pneuma in the untainted land seems to be endless at this time, but is constantly dissipating with the passage of time. After thousands of yuan hui, it is difficult for me to calculate how much chaotic pneuma is left. If you can't advance the time of becoming an innate God within the 100 yuan hui, your future will be worrying. Luo Fan said to Luo Fu seriously, "It turns out that this elixir spirit shaping technique has such power. If I successfully cultivate this cultivation method within the 100 yuan hui, will I be able to surpass senior brother Hongjun?" Luo Fu looked at Luo Fan expectantly. Luo Fan smiled slightly and said, "That's just a chance for you to surpass him. If you really want to surpass your senior brother Hongjun, I can't guarantee that. If you work hard, maybe one day you can surpass me." When Luo Fu heard this, he jumped in joy and said, "That's great. Dad, hurry up and tell me what arrangements you have. I'll definitely do everything you say." Luo Fu was very smart. Combining what Luo Fan had said before, he knew that Luo Fan's next arrangement was beneficial for him to cultivate into an innate God within the 100 yuan hui. "You're really my son?" Luo Fan laughed. As he spoke, the grayish light emitted from Guang Pu's body, which was enveloped by Luo Fan's formation, gradually weakened and shrank. At the same time, her eyes gradually opened. The moment Guang Pu opened her eyes, there seemed to be 2 rays of silver-green light flashing across her eyes. Following that, an incomparably joyful expression flashed across her face. Seeing that Guang Pu had woken up, Luo Fan raised his hand and waved. The formation around Guang Pu disappeared silently. "Thank you for the technique, Master." Guang Pu bowed and said with joy. Being able to obtain this technique is the result of your 100 years of hard work. In the future, when you cultivate, you must always pay attention to it. Don't slack off. Luo Fan nodded and said, Guangpu will not disappoint Master's expectations. In the future, I will definitely cultivate this Tai Yin sacred wood technique with all my heart and break through the realm soon. Guangpu was sweating. She was afraid and happy at the same time. This Tai Yin sacred wood technique was a technique that Luo Fan had refined with the help of the previous 12 techniques. It was the most advanced and mysterious technique among the 12 techniques that Luo Fan had prepared to impart to Guangpu. He would only impart it to Guangpu after she had completely passed the 12 tests. If she didn't pass any of the tests, Luo Fan would still take her as his disciple, but the technique he imparted to her would only be a technique that had been refined with the missing technique. With one less test, the level of the technique would be lower until the incomparably low technique was refined into a technique. That was all. Guangpu, who had experienced this technique, understood this fact after being touched by Luo Fan. How could she not be afraid? How could she not be happy? P.S. This book will be recommended again next week. That's right, it's the position that has been recommended so many times. I seem to have become a specialist in recommending the cover of the second category. But at least it's better than running around naked for a week. Also, because the collection of this book is not enough, it can't meet the requirements to be recommended. It's hard to say how it's not enough. So the editor is very generous and gave it the right to not be recommended, saying that it's to accumulate experience. So tonight, maybe tomorrow morning, this book will be published. Actually, I really don't want to say this, and I don't really want it to be published now. Publishing it now is equivalent to suicide. There are currently 4,500 collections of this book. Readers on Qidian all know what will happen if this kind of result is published. But what can they do if it's not published? Since the editor said so, it goes without saying what it means. Recommendations, advertisements will become less and less, maybe even no more. As a newcomer, without recommendations, no clicks, no advertisements, it's almost certain that the number of collections will decrease. Want to endure until I have enough collections to be qualified to be recommended? To be honest, the feeling of being abandoned is very painful. So, I can only make use of the opportunity to publish it. When people see this, they will definitely not like it. But I still solemnly beg all readers who like this book, after the book is published, to subscribe more, to vote more, because this was the only way for the book to get more recommendations. Only then would it have a chance to be read by more people, and only then would it receive more support. Then, I will have a stronger motivation to continue writing. This is definitely not a threat. Chapter 100. Luo Fan smiled and said, When I was traveling the untainted land, I once encountered a chaotic spiritual root. He said, When I was traveling in the untainted land, I once encountered a chaotic spiritual root. Because my spiritual aperture was not open at that time, I didn't take it. If you can obtain this chaotic spiritual root from the Yin Divine with technique that you practice, it will be greatly beneficial. You can go and collect it as soon as possible. As he said this, he raised his hand and pointed at Guangpu's sea of consciousness. With a turn and an explosion, it turned into a large piece of memory and completely integrated into Guangpu's divine soul. Thank you, Master, for your guidance. Guangpu checked the memory and knew that it was a way en route to a certain place in the untainted land. She could not help but be overjoyed. The chaotic spiritual root was a kind of plant born in the source of chaotic spiritual qi. It could be a spiritual herb, a divine tree, a strange flower, or a strange fruit. Its origin was the same as that of the innate gods. However, when it was born, due to some mysterious and unpredictable mechanism, it could not produce spiritual consciousness. Therefore, it could only be a spiritual root and not an innate god. This chaotic spiritual root, it not only contained the nature of the chaotic spiritual qi, but also contained all kinds of mysterious magical powers and powers. For Guangpu, who cultivated the Yin Divine with technique, if she could refine and absorb it, Not only would her cultivation be greatly improved, but she could also obtain the natural power of this chaotic spiritual root. It was so mysterious that it was hard to describe it in words. Fu-er, you should also go with Guangpu. Your fated chance is in this trip. If this trip goes well, you may be able to break through the Dan realm and ignite the divine fire within 10,000 years. Luo Fan turned his head and said to Luo Fu, I want to go too. Luo Fu was stunned for a moment and then became overjoyed. That's great. I can finally leave Buzhou Mountain and go out to play. Junior sister, don't worry. I will take good care of you in the future. Buzhou Mountain may be huge, high, and mysterious. However, for the childish Luo Fu, he was already tired of playing for 129,600 years. Now that he could leave Buzhou Mountain and walk in the untainted land, how could he not be happy? Disciple Guangpu, although Fu-er is my son, his background is too poor and he doesn't have enough experience and cultivation. I want him to go with you so that he can gain some experience. On the way, you need to supervise his cultivation. Don't let him fool around. Luo Fan ignored Luo Fu and said to Guangpu, Please rest assured, master. Guangpu will definitely look after little senior brother. Guangpu didn't dare to say anything more. Although she was a little confused about Luo Fu's background, she quickly agreed. Seeing that Luo Fan didn't stop Luo Fu from calling her little junior sister, she mistakenly thought that Luo Fan had already decided on the order, so she treated Luo Fu as her senior brother. Luo Fan didn't care about trifles. He nodded and slightly raised his hand. Guangpu felt a gentle and irresistible force coming out of nowhere and slowly lifted her up. Today, you two can go down the mountain. After helping Guangpu up, Luo Fan said to them, so fast. We're our Uncle Ao and Nao. Luo Fu was shocked. He didn't dare to be proud of calling Guangpu brother anymore and said hurriedly, They have their own cultivation. If you rely on them for everything, when will you be able to return to the innate realm? Luo Fan said lightly. This sentence made Luo Fu pout his mouth, but he also knew that Luo Fan had made up his mind and couldn't change it. He could only bow together with Guangpu and leave reluctantly. Seeing Luo Fu and Guangpu leaving on the white tiger, Luo Fan sighed. Luo Fan sighed. With a thought, Ji Feng Boy, who was tempering his body at the peak of Mount Buzhou, flashed and turned into a ray of silver light, disappearing into the void and closely following behind the two of them. Although he said that to Luo Fu, it was the first time Luo Fu had left, so how could he be at ease? Thus, he had Ji Feng Boy follow by his side to protect the two of them. 360 million miles. According to the memory of the predecessor, Pishio, there should be 18 innate gods on this road, but I don't know how many of them have cultivated divine sense and transformed. Luo Fan thought. Standing up, he stepped out and touched the Taoist fire talisman. With a flash of golden light, he arrived at the top of Buzhou Mountain. With another step, he stepped into the mini kiliocosm of the Wuji Palace in the void and stood on the huge light. This untainted world is too barren. It takes a lot of planning to find a place to train for the two of them. In this way, it won't be good. Luo Fan thought to himself. As he looked down at the lifeless continent that spanned thousands of miles, he had already made up his mind. Let me see how far I can go with my current cultivation, Luo Fan murmured. His words were filled with endless determination. With a thought, the limitless void palace instantly left the ocean formed by the chaotic Yuan Qi. In the blink of an eye, it rushed into the endless starry sky above. Luo Fan had explored the endless starry sky and knew that it was very mysterious. It seemed to be infinitely broad and also infinitely narrow. Looking at the endless starry sky from the top of Buzhou Mountain, no matter how much he narrowed his perception, he could sense the end of the endless starry sky. However, no matter how much he raised his senses, he was unable to see through the end and beyond it. Driving the Wuji Palace into the mysterious endless starry sky, Luo Fan instantly felt as if he had entered another universe and another world with the help of the Wuji Palace's perception. The endless starry sky, which he could sense the end of, became infinitely vast. The untainted land, which was only one step away, seemed to become extremely far away at this moment. If not for the mark left on it, he would not be able to find the way back when he turned around. This was a very mysterious change. Luo Fan knew that this was the characteristic of the endless starry sky. It was because the endless starry sky was between the untainted land and the chaos. Therefore, it had the characteristics of the untainted land and the chaos. Therefore, he was not surprised. Controlling the Wuji Palace, he flashed and moved through the void. Without any process, he crossed a distance of 60 million miles. The ability to move through the void was more than 100 times stronger than when he was in the untainted land. After a few teleportations, Luo Fan had already arrived at his first destination. It was a continent that floated in the endless starry sky and revolved around Buzhou Mountain. In the endless starry sky, not all of them were stars. In fact, there were many continents. The distribution of these continents was very mysterious. They revolved around Buzhou Mountain and followed a complicated cycle. However, the cycle of operation was one cycle per year. Although the continents in the endless starry sky seemed to be very close to each other in the untainted land, in fact, the distance between every two continents was extremely far. Even with the Wuji Palace's ability to move through the void that was 100 times stronger, it still needed dozens of teleportations to reach it. If I remember correctly, there should be a first sky true water spring on this continent. It's only been a few tens of thousands of years. It has only been tens of thousands of years, so it shouldn't have dried up. Luo Fan guessed. The Wuji Palace was already floating above the continent. With the help of the Wuji Palace's ability to increase one's perception, Luo Fan instantly reflected the continent with a radius of more than 3 million miles into his mind. On this continent, because of the existence of the Tiani true water, there was endless vitality everywhere. The star essence emitted by the stars in the sky fell onto this continent and was affected by this boundless life force. All kinds of strange changes occurred, and tens of thousands of extremely mysterious creatures condensed on this continent. There were all kinds of mysterious plants decorated with starlight, and there were also all kinds of star beasts formed by the combination of starlight and various materials living on this continent, making this continent full of vitality. But it was completely different from the desolation of the untainted land. Luo Fan was not interested in these star beasts that had no intelligence and had no bright future. With a thought, he instantly found the mouth of the spring in his memory. The Wuji Palace flashed, and it was already above the spring. The gurgling silver true water continuously emerged from the spring, forming a small stream. It extended for dozens of miles, and then it suddenly sank into the ground, disappearing without a trace. With a thought, the limitless Void Palace suddenly produced a special suction force that directly targeted the spring. Like a whale sucking in water, the gurgling first sky true water was continuously sucked into the limitless Void Palace. After the spring absorbed nearly half of the Tiani true water, Luo Fan stopped this sucking process, and his mind turned. The Wuji Palace instantly disappeared, and when it reappeared, it was already 60 million miles away. After teleporting dozens of times, it appeared on another continent. After collecting some kind of rare materials on this continent, it teleported again and arrived on a third continent. In this way, it took a total of 49 miles to travel through more than 400 continents. Only then did Luo Fan collect all the materials he needed. With satisfaction, he controlled the Wuji Palace to change direction and followed the fire talisman imprints he left on Buzhou Mountain and threw it straight towards Buzhou Mountain. After a short while, it landed in the liquefied primordial chi sea at the top of Buzhou Mountain. The Tiani true water gives birth to vitality. The spirit of a tiger in the west is a cat. Hundreds of thoughts flashed through Luo Fan's mind, and in a short while, he had already thought through everything clearly. This method will definitely succeed. With that thought, he raised his hand, and a bright red drop of essence blood shot out from his finger like a bullet. This drop of essence blood looked like ordinary blood, but in fact, it contained all of Luo Fan's life information. Although it was not the source of life, it was still extremely precious, and it even contained dozens of magic power units of Luo Fan. If an ordinary person fused with this small drop of essence blood, they could instantly form a pill, according to the realm of the essence shaping mind technique. After this drop of essence blood appeared, it crazily absorbed the endless primordial chi in this small kiliacosm, and its size increased crazily. In the blink of an eye, it had turned into a blood ball with a diameter of 100 feet. The inside of the Wuji Palace was a boundless kiliacosm. Because of the many years of absorbing primordial chi and refining the palace's body, it could already produce its own primordial chi. In just a moment, the amount of primordial chi that was poured into this drop of essence blood exceeded the amount of primordial chi that Luo Fan had absorbed in 3 years of cultivation, but it did not cause any strange phenomenon. Divided. When Luo Fan opened his eyes, 2 mysterious lights flashed in his eyes. Chapter 101. His disciple descends the mountain. Luo Fan creates life. 2. These 12,960 phantoms were the color of blood, translucent and lifelike. Among them, there were dinosaurs, tigers, elephants, insects, ants. All of them were alive, roaring soundlessly in midair as they circled around. Among them, there was a creature that should not have appeared, a human. The human shadow was mixed among the thousands of shadows. Its face was blurry, and its height was changing. It seemed to be looking around curiously. Luo Fan's body was a real connate Taoist body. It was a body that was shaped according to the true appearance of Pangu's body under the guidance of Pangu's primordial spirit. As for Pangu, he was the supreme existence who had created the primordial world. His body could be said to be all-encompassing and contained endless mysteries. In the primordial world, there were countless connate gods and all kinds of life forms. However, they had all evolved and developed from Pangu's body. In other words, the connate Taoist body that was constructed according to Pangu's body contained the information of all life forms in the primordial world. As long as one used a special incantation, a special mental cultivation method, and a special power to trigger and decompose it, one could separate the essence of all kinds of living beings in the primordial world from a drop of connate Taoist body's blood essence. And that was exactly what Luo Fan was doing at the moment. Unfortunately, although Luo Fan's cultivation had reached the level of earthly immortal Tao fruit and perfected immortal karma. However, compared to Pangu, there is a world of difference between heaven and earth. Even if he tried his best, the number of soul essences that a drop of blood essence could produce was only 12,960. In fact, among the 12,960 kinds of living beings, there was no primordial world species like the Pishio. The strongest one was only a dinosaur, and the most intelligent one was only a human in the future. After these 12,960 blood-colored phantoms appeared, Luo Fan raised his left hand, and from his sleeve universe, materials the size of a small hill gushed out, falling down like rain, scattering to every corner of this continent with a radius of tens of millions of miles. The materials that Luo Fan had collected from more than 400 continents in the endless starry sky had already been distributed everywhere on this continent. At this time, the distribution of the materials from the world in the sleeve combined with these materials, but there was a certain mysterious law, as if they had formed some kind of organic aggregation. Luo Fan was only able to do this because he was the master of the limitless Void Palace. If he was in the untainted land, not to mention millions of miles, even millions of miles, Luo Fan wouldn't be able to achieve such precise control. Seeing that everything was going according to plan, Luo Fan raised his hand and pressed it down gently. The 12,960 shadows that were distributed in front of him suddenly turned into blood-colored rainbows and fell to every corner of this continent. In the blink of an eye, they combined with all kinds of materials that were distributed all over the continent, causing countless materials to gradually flash with traces of blood-colored light. Luo Fan's mind moved slightly. Complicated and mysterious mental cultivation methods flashed in his mind. The earthly immortal's Tao fruit within his dantian exploded at this instant. It transformed into a strand of boundless power that instantly rushed out from the 129,600 meridians above his dantian, and it circled around his body to form a profound path that was so complicated that an ordinary person would instantly faint upon seeing it. With the operation of this mental cultivation method and spiritual power, his body suddenly exuded an extremely mysterious aura. This aura, with the help of his power as the creator of this spirit space, spread over thousands of miles, enveloping the entire continent in this aura. This aura contained endless vitality and seemed to be an indescribably mysterious catalyst. It caused the entire continent that seemed to be floating in the boundless void to suddenly undergo an extremely mysterious change. In the blink of an eye, countless extremely complicated and mysterious three-dimensional talismans instantly appeared on the 12,960 positions on this continent. These positions were impressively the places where the materials that Luo Fan had laid down were combined with the blood-colored shadows. As these talismans flashed, those positions gradually underwent a shocking change. Under the action of an invisible force, those materials continued to gather together, forming 12,960 piles of materials that were wrapped in the three-dimensional talismans of various shapes. Bang! 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 A sound like a heartbeat came from these 12,960 positions and filled the entire spirit space. At first, these sounds were at the same frequency. Although they sounded extremely grand and shocking, there was only one sound, so it was monotonous. However, after an unknown number of hours, these heartbeats gradually became slightly different. Gradually, it was divided into 12,960 different kinds of heartbeats. When combined together, they were like large and small pearls falling on a jade plate. It was almost continuous, rushing to every inch of the void. Although this was the case, there was not the slightest noise. Instead, it seemed extremely natural. It was as if only this sound was the sound of nature. It was the sound that should appear on this continent. It was mysterious and unfathomable. Along with the sound, the materials that were wrapped by the talismans gradually shrank, gradually vibrated, and gradually condensed. The bursts of blood-colored light became more and more intense. Gradually, these blood-colored lights weaved into countless silk cocoons in the three-dimensional talismans. These silk cocoons constantly expanded and contracted along with a marvelous heartbeat, jumping and bouncing, as if they were nurturing something. Luo Fan's figure sat cross-legged on the ball of light. His eyes were tightly closed, and the mantra flashed in his mind continuously. The magic power in his body flowed endlessly without a moment's pause. The mysterious aura emitted from his body produced some mysterious and inexplicable fluctuations from time to time, as if it was adjusting the changes on this entire continent. This continued, and in the blink of an eye, 9 times 9, 81 days had passed. On this day, Luo Fan suddenly opened his eyes, raised his hand, pointed down, and softly shouted, "Vitality of all things, roll out. In the heavens and on the earth, only I am supreme." His voice was grand and majestic, as if it had merged with the entire void, as if it was emitted by the spirit space itself. As soon as he finished speaking, the incomparably mysterious aura emitted from his body suddenly converged. At the same time, a grayish-brown airflow that seemed to contain all things in the world and contain the supreme Tao rushed out from his hand. In this airflow, there were countless three-dimensional talismans in the shape of Buzhou Mountain flashing and floating in it. That was exactly half of the magic power in Luo Fan's body. The three-dimensional talismans contained in it were his magic power units. And this magic power contained as many as 129,600 magic power units. These magic power units were all full, clearly containing more than half of the total energy that Luo Fan had absorbed in this Yuan Wei. After this magic power left his body, Luo Fan's face turned pale for the first time since he came to this untainted world. Obviously, The loss of this magic power was a great loss for Luo Fan. Although, with the existence of the earthly immortal Tao fruit, after these magic power units left his body, he only needed the earthly immortal Tao fruit to turn and shake, and then he could separate the same number of magic power units. It would not cause his cultivation to regress. But the energy contained in these magic power units could only be replenished by him by absorbing again. How could it be so easy to replenish half of the energy that he had absorbed in Yuanwei? Therefore, it could be predicted that after this magic power was released, Luo Fan would need at least a very long time to feel unbearably empty in his body. Although it was such a huge cost, Luo Fan did not hesitate at all, and his confidence did not waver at all. He was calm, and the mantra in his mind flowed faster. His mind entered a mysterious state, and his mind followed closely the magic power that was released. He controlled the magic power to suddenly split it into 12,960 strands and rush straight into the 12,960 positions on the continent below, into the three-dimensional talismans, and into the blood-colored silk cocoon. As these magic power units merged, the blood-colored silk cocoon instantly exploded. A strong vitality gushed out, and even the chaotic vitality that filled the continent was rushed by this vitality, forming a great cloud, and the specific changes of the continent below were covered. Roar, woo, choo choo. Not long after, millions of roars containing endless joy rushed out from below, breaking through the surging chaotic vitality that turned into gray clouds that blocked Luo Fan's vision and made the originally barren continent appear in front of Luo Fan again. However, this continent was no longer barren. On the continent, 12,960 races appeared in various positions on the continent, replacing the three-dimensional talismans, jackals, wolves, tigers, leopards, insects, fish, birds, and beasts flying in the sky, swimming in the water, climbing on trees, walking on the ground. There was everything that should be there, and there was nothing that could not be found. At this time, they were all howling at the sky and scrupulously venting their joy of being born to the world. Finally done, although Luo Fan had consumed a lot of energy, his face showed an indescribable joy. An indescribable sense of achievement arose spontaneously. At the same time, all kinds of enlightenment flowed through his mind. These more than 10,000 kinds of living beings were created by him, and the essence of these living beings were separated from his blood essence. Naturally, he had an extremely clear and precise grasp of the process of the birth of these more than 10,000 kinds of living beings. The trace of the great Tao of creation that was revealed when these living beings were born was also displayed in his mind without concealment. In an instant, Luo Fan felt that the obscure and profound great Tao seemed to shake in front of him. Along with this enlightenment, the magic power that was circulating endlessly within his body suddenly condensed, and within his dantian, an extremely profound Tao fruit that pulsed and contracted, containing boundless power and boundless profundities, was condensed. This Tao fruit spun slightly, shook, and then suddenly split, expanding to twice its original size. Then it turned again, shook again, and divided again, and expanded again. In the blink of an eye, it had become 3 times its original size. Not only did it replenish the 129,600 magic power units previously used up, but it also increased by 129,600 magic power units. Compared to before the creation of these more than 10,000 kinds of living beings, it had increased by half. Blessed by the heavens, blessed by the heavens! Luo Fan was overjoyed, and his face was full of vigor. Although the energy in his body was reduced by half compared to before, and he seemed very empty, he only needed to spend some time to absorb energy to replenish it, so it was not a loss at all. Chapter 102. Human Creation Success. Advanced Martial Arts. 1. Cultivation. Of course, hard work is indispensable, but action and practice are also indispensable. Only by combining the two can I make steady progress. Luo Fan had never understood this principle as deeply as he did at that moment. After thinking about it, his mind moved slightly. He already knew where the human he had created was at this moment. He took a step forward and teleported through the void. He had already arrived at that location. The location of the human was close to the center of this huge continent, at the foot of the mountain where the Lingjua Peak Hall was located. Luo Fan did not directly appear to meet the human he had created. He only hid in the void and looked down at the hundreds of naked men and women who were howling at the sky with joy in their eyes. Seeing these familiar faces, Luo Fan could not help but feel an indescribable sense of familiarity, as if he had seen the humans of the future. These humans were created by Luo Fan, and they were formed from the essence of a drop of his blood and various materials. However, he could clearly guide them. These humans looked very similar to him on the outside, but their insides were completely different. The bodies of these humans were more similar to the structure of the humans of the future on Earth, but they were much worse than the Khanate Taoism body. The difference between the two was like the difference between heaven and earth. Even so, these bodies were much more exquisite than the humans of the future on Earth. This difference in structure allowed these people to have excellent cultivation aptitude, and they could also have a lifespan of 300 years that far exceeded that of the future. This kind of lifespan was not eye-catching in the untainted world, but compared to the humans of the future who had a lifespan of 70 or 80 years, it was already an essential difference. These hundreds of people howled at the sky for a long time before they vented the joy of their birth. After that, their minds were as pure as a piece of white paper, and they looked around at a loss. They did not know what to do next and how to survive. When Luo Fan saw this, he knew that this could not go on. His eyes swept across these hundreds of people, and a light flashed in his mind. He quickly analyzed. In the blink of an eye, he picked out a relatively strong, naked man whose spiritual sense was stronger than the others. After that, he raised his hand and gently pointed. A little spiritual light appeared out of thin air and went straight into the man's head. It merged with his spiritual sense and turned into a memory that contained a lot of information. There were no Taoist techniques within it, only some common knowledge about life, including basic survival skills such as drawing fire, picking wild fruits, hunting, and so on. After obtaining this memory, the bewilderment and helplessness in the eyes of the man who was stronger and smarter than the others instantly disappeared. He didn't care where this knowledge came from. He leaped up and stood on a high place, shouting loudly and encouraging the hundreds of people to do various tasks, such as picking wild fruits, looking for firewood, or looking for wild beasts according to the time of the spirit world. It had been tens of millions of years since it was created. During this period, it had almost constantly absorbed the mysterious chaotic chi. Naturally, it evolved into countless plants that were condensed from the essence of wood. Before the creatures created by Luo Fan, this whole continent was already full of vitality and fruitful. Although these people created by Luo Fan were ignorant and pure, they did not need to worry about starving to death. Luo Fan looked at the relatively smart man who was distributing the work of hundreds of people. In his heart, he knew that the first human emperor of the human clan that he had created had appeared. With a smile, Luo Fan no longer cared about how these people would survive. With a thought, he moved through the void and arrived on the central platform of the Thunderbolt Pool in the depths of the Peak Hall. He sat cross-legged, raised his hand, and pointed up, and suddenly launched the Wuji Palace. As the Limitless Void Palace was activated, an extremely strong suction force was emitted from the body of the Limitless Void Palace. Suddenly, a whirlpool appeared on top of Mount Bujo, which was formed by the liquefied chaotic energy. The whirlpool was getting bigger and bigger. Endless chaotic chi poured into the Wuji Palace and turned into a gray light beam that fell from the sky. It connected the huge light ball in the sky and the towering mountain in the center. It rushed straight into the depths of the Peak Hall and covered the body of Luo Fan, who was sitting cross-legged on the central platform of the Thunderbolt Pool. This gray light beam was 10 feet in diameter and looked extremely solid. It seemed to be completely solid, but it was condensed by the endless chaotic chi. It rushed down like the Milky Way. The mantra of the nameless skill flowed through Luo Fan's mind. At the same time, the earthly immortal's Tao fruit exploded and turned into a magic power that was half the size of the previous one. It quickly circulated in his body according to the nameless skill's route. With the operation of the nameless skill, his body gradually produced a huge suction force like a black hole, pulling in all the chaotic chi that could be pulled in. The solid beam of light that enveloped him was instantly cut off from the point where it touched his body. But the chaotic energy contained in the beam of light, which was enough to make any innate god explode, was continuously absorbed into his body, without leaving a single drop behind. The magic power that circulated in his body was like a shark that smelled blood. It suddenly twisted and twisted the huge amount of chaotic chi, dispersing and purifying it. Finally, it completely swallowed it into the void inside the three-dimensional talisman. A huge amount of primal chaos yuan chi rushed into this mini kiliacosm through the Wuji Palace, and was then absorbed by Luo Fan's body, without leaving a single drop behind, replenishing the extremely empty, almost like an empty shell of magical power units. This kind of super strong absorption power was dozens of times stronger than the absorption power of Luo Fan's own cultivation. The influx of chaotic chi that exceeded his own absorption limit did not make Luo Fan uncomfortable. Instead, he felt an indescribable satisfaction because the magic power units in his body were constantly replenished. Time passed slowly. Spring passed and autumn came. 1 year later, another year passed. Unknowingly, Luo Fan had been cultivating on the central platform of the Thunderbolt Pool for as long as 18,000 years. These 18,000 years were the time in a mini kiliacosm. For the untainted land, it was nearly 50 years. During these 50 years, the whirlpool formed at the top of Buzhou Mountain due to the rapid absorption of the chaotic chi became bigger and bigger. The range of influence also became wider and wider. Unknowingly, it had expanded to nearly 10,000 miles. In the mini kiliacosm, the gray light beam that rushed down from the light ball and pointed to the depths of the top hall had not been interrupted for 10,000 years. Unknowingly, it had become a scenery of the mini kiliacosm. On this day, the pillar of light that had been there for the past 10,000 years, which had shot out from the ball of light and extended to the center of the dangling peak hall's lightning pool, suddenly disappeared without a trace. There was no sound, no strange phenomenon. Between heaven and earth, the scene of 18,000 years ago was restored. As the strange phenomenon disappeared, Luo Fan, who was cultivating on the central platform of the Thunderbolt Pool, suddenly opened his eyes. The two deep and serene universes in his eyes seemed to become deeper and more serene. After a while, the strange phenomenon disappeared, and Luo Fan's face gradually showed joy. Suddenly, he raised his head and let out a long roar. The sound was like the roar of a dragon or tiger. The entire mini kiliacosm shook slightly with his long roar, as if the whole world was responding to his long roar. The long roar stopped after a long time, but the lingering sound was still melodious, lingering around the entire mini kiliacosm. It seemed to announce to the mini kiliacosm that the long roar had existed not long ago, as if it would never stop. 18,000 years. After spending so much time, I've finally replenished all the energy. Luo Fan's heart was filled with both joy and emotion. At this time, Luo Fan had a deeper understanding of the lack of his cultivation realm. If his earthly immortal fruit of Wei improved and allowed him to become a golden immortal, then this earthly immortal fruit of Wei would be perfect. At that time, even if he lost most of the spiritual power units, he only needed to touch the fruit of Wei, and he could instantly replenish all the spiritual power units. Then he could circulate his spiritual power and quickly restore the energy contained in the spiritual power units. He didn't need to absorb it from the outside world like now. This time, he was able to absorb enough energy in 18,000 years because his cultivation realm had reached the required level, but he didn't need to spend time to nourish the spiritual power units. Otherwise, he was afraid that he would have to spend 10 times more time to replenish all the spiritual power units. Luo Fan stood up and shouted softly, "Where is the limitless boy?" Before his voice finished, the void in front of him twisted slightly. The figure of the limitless boy instantly appeared in front of him, bowing and looking very respectful. Luo Fan didn't speak. He raised his hand and gently pointed at the forehead of the limitless boy. The memory of the limitless boy in the past 18,000 years flowed through his mind. Seeing these memories, Luo Fan was secretly surprised and praised. In the past 18,000 years, the changes in the mini kiliacosm could be said to be changing with each passing day. The speed of development was so fast that it reached a shocking level. Over the years, the 12,960 creatures set off a magnificent battle scene in this mini kiliacosm, showing a magnificent chapter of life. After countless killings, expeditions, invasions, crushing, reproduction, and development, the current mini kiliacosm was no longer the scene of 18,000 years ago. The human race was born with high intelligence among the tens of thousands of species in this mini kiliacosm. Moreover, Luo Fan taught them the necessary common sense of survival, so the speed of development was far faster than other creatures. At this time, they had already occupied the ruling position of this mini kiliacosm and became the majority of the species on this continent. The territory they occupied was as much as 60% of the entire continent, and they had developed a civilization that even Luo Fan couldn't help but admire. It was a kind of martial arts civilization, and it was a high-level martial arts civilization. I didn't think that there would be such development. The creativity of humans is really amazing. Luo Fan praised. Today, the population on the continent had developed from a few 110,000 years ago to nearly 300 million today. Moreover, dozens of small countries were established to attack each other. On the continent, there were endless disputes because of this. Chapter 103. Creation Success, Advanced Martial Arts, 2. From the memory of the limitless boy, Luo Fan could not help but be interested in the changes of the human beings in this world. Although the people in this spirit space were created by him, he did not interfere with their development. They could grow strong and finally develop such a mysterious civilization, but it was the result of their natural evolution. It contained some mysterious truth, but it was also worth Luo Fan to comprehend. After thinking about it, his figure flashed and he stepped out. He had already arrived at the entrance of the spirit space, which was also the sun of this world. He looked down at the continent that had undergone great changes. On this continent, the scenery was no longer the same as it was 10,000 years ago. The pure natural landscape had mostly faded in the past 10,000 years, and various traces of civilization occupied more than half of the surface of the continent. Towns, villages, palaces, barracks, checkpoints, rice fields, vegetable fields, castles. Everything that should appear in human civilization had all appeared here. Although the limitless boy already knew what kind of civilization the human civilization of this world was, Luo Fan had not seen it with his own eyes, so he was still curious. With a thought, he stepped out and arrived at a place where a small dispute was taking place on this continent. There was a small forest here, with an area of only a few hundred feet. The trees were neither tall nor short, and seemed to be dense. They had no other use, but it was no problem for them to block the line of sight. After coming to this forest, Luo Fan's figure had silently changed. He was no longer the young man in a grayish-brown robe who constantly exuded a mysterious and unpredictable aura. Instead, he was a middle-aged man with an ordinary appearance, wearing the ordinary warrior clothes of this world, and his whole body exuded a vigorous aura. Surnamed Zhuang, you'll die a horrible death. How can you say that, big brother? We have been sworn brothers for more than 20 years. Is this what I get in return for your vicious curse? This is just too heartbreaking. Two conversations came from a dense place in the forest. The first voice that spoke was hoarse, containing endless hatred and a trace of embarrassment that could not be concealed. The second voice was leisurely and unhurried, as if everything was under control. I regret that I was blind back then. He actually became sworn brothers with a cruel and unscrupulous person like you. Now, you've caused my family property to be seized, my family to be torn apart, and my family to be destroyed. I hate you. That hoarse voice was like a cuckoo, crying blood. Big brother, if you obediently hand over the heavenly martial divine chapter, everything will be fine. We're still good brothers. I will let my sister-in-law and nephew reunite with you. Even if it is the family property, I can return it to you. Is a cultivation technique more important than your wife and child? More precious than our friendship of more than 20 years? Hearing this, Luo Fan couldn't help but marvel at the shamelessness of this person. Although he didn't feel anything, how strong and stable was his Taoist heart? How could he be shaken by the misfortune of an unrelated person? Ah, what a good brother. I didn't expect that after being brothers for more than 20 years, you were still hiding such a killer move. I didn't expect that when you taught me the martial arts, you still had such a trick up your sleeve. The originally leisurely voice suddenly turned into panic and disbelief. This is the worst mistake I've ever made in my life. I actually passed on my family's divine martial arts to you. Ancestors above, forgive this unfilial descendant for being unfilial. My Lin family's inheritance ends today. Go to hell. Then, with a loud bang, a bright and dazzling blue light and black light suddenly exploded, illuminating the sky and earth with a dark blue color. The ground shook violently, almost like an earthquake. A powerful shock wave burst out from the place where the sound came from. The whole forest seemed to be swept by a hurricane, and the sound of breaking came from everywhere. After a long time, it calmed down. Luo Fan turned a few times between the trees and saw the battlefield. But now it had become a huge pit, as if it had been caused by the explosion of several tons of bombs. Around the big pit, the trees were smashed, broken, and collapsed in all directions. In the center of the big pit, there were two middle-aged men in tattered clothes. They were wounded all over. One of them was lying on the ground, and the other was facing the sky. The two of them were surrounded by blood, like two fountains gushing out, like two blood-red flowers at the bottom of the pit. Luo Fan looked at them and knew that the two middle-aged men were dead. Even their souls had completely dissipated in the impact just now. He didn't even need to calculate. He had already matched them with the sound from before. Gratitude and grudges, love and hatred, it's nothing more than this. Luo Fan sighed in his heart. With a thought, from the middle-aged man lying on the ground, a roll of tiger skin, which had been tanned through 36 processes, broke out of his body and appeared in front of Luo Fan. With a wave of his hand, the leather scroll unfurled and unfurled in front of him. Furthermore, the blood and bodily fluids of the middle-aged man that had stained the scroll had been completely dispersed. The entire leather scroll was now completely clean. Heavenly Martial Divine Chapter. These words were similar to Chinese characters, but more complex and more vivid. Although Luo Fan hadn't learned this kind of words, what kind of realm was he in? With just a glance, he was able to recognize these words through a sliver of will that the person who wrote these words had involuntarily added to them. It turns out to be a martial arts technique. Let me see what is so mysterious about this martial arts technique. Luo Fan immediately recognized that these words recorded a martial arts technique. Sweeping his eyes over it, Luo Fan couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. The starting point of this technique was to start from an ordinary person. Through tempering the body, training strength, and raising the realm, one could obtain incredible power. If this technique was cultivated to the peak, an ordinary person could obtain a long life of tens of thousands of years. It could also give this ordinary person the power to split mountains and seas, and the power to shatter the void. This shattering was naturally only the void of this spirit kiliacosm. This kind of power had already reached the power of the birth of an ordinary innate god. However, that was only in theory. With just a glance, Luo Fan found more than 10 mistakes in it. Through the analysis of these mistakes, if one purely cultivated according to this cultivation technique, it would be impossible to cultivate it to the perfection realm. Even if one cultivated it to a certain realm, one's chi and blood would flow in the opposite direction, unable to restrain their power and explode and die. Let me change it. Luo Fan's mind moved, and the 10 or so words and patterns recorded in the wrong places instantly changed. But in an instant, he had already corrected and completed it, and it even became more mysterious. Suddenly, Luo Fan had a feeling that if he followed this heavenly martial divine chapter, there would be a great opportunity for him. A great opportunity related to the key to achieving the Tao. With such a feeling appearing, how could Luo Fan let go of it? In his mind, the mental cultivation method of the yin-yang calculation method flowed, and after some calculations, he found that the opportunity was in the Lin family fortress, which was the family of the middle-aged man who swallowed the heavenly martial divine chapter. He wanted to calculate more specifically, but he couldn't. So, it is. Luo Fan was overjoyed. Since he couldn't calculate it, he was even more convinced that this opportunity was the key to achieving the Tao. Because if he could calculate it clearly, then it proved that this fortune wasn't very great. If he couldn't, then it proved that this fortune had exceeded the level of his cultivation that he could calculate clearly, and it was very likely to be related to his attainment in the Tao. With a wave of his hand, the heavenly martial divine chapter entered his sleeve universe, and with a step, he was already outside the forest. Seeing such a mysterious martial arts technique, Luo Fan was already very interested in this world. Even if he didn't have the feeling of sudden impulse, he planned to go to other places in this world to see the various sceneries of this world with his own eyes. Now that he knew that this was where the opportunity lay, how could he let it go? After walking for a while, he arrived at the residence of the two middle-aged men, which was the Lin family fortress that was related to Luo Fan's opportunity to achieve the Tao. For Luo Fan, even if he had never seen or heard of it, it was not a secret, and he only needed to think about it to know. The Lin family fortress was a medium-sized manor, and there were tens of thousands of people living in it, serving the castle inside the manor. I haven't seen such a scene for a long time. I really miss it. Such a thought flashed in Luo Fan's mind, and his mood gradually relaxed. Tens of thousands of years of cultivation had made Luo Fan more and more distant from the future Earth, so much so that it was almost buried in the depths of his memory. At this time, seeing this scene that could only appear in the future Earth, he couldn't help but recall the life back then. After a while of reminiscing, Luo Fan walked into the manor. Immediately, a young man who looked like a manor servant came up to question him. "Honored martial artist, my Lin family fortress is currently under martial law. Please forgive me for not receiving you." Perhaps it was because he could see that Luo Fan was not a simple person. The manor servant spoke in a very polite manner. "Is Zhuang Zixi not here? Why is he not coming out to receive me? If not for his warm invitation, do you think I would come to your poor and remote place?" Luo Fan deliberately put on an impatient expression and shouted. Zhuang Zixi was the most shameless of the two middle-aged men from before. "So, sir, is a guest invited by our second lord. Our second lord left in a hurry this morning to attend to some matters. Please follow me." The manor servant had seen many things and knew that the person in front of him was not someone he could afford to provoke, so he didn't mind Luo Fan's impolite words at all. Luo Fan expressionlessly nodded his head and followed the manor servant's guidance into the Lin family fortress. Along the way, he observed the residents of the Lin family fortress and discovered that they all practiced martial arts. Whether it was physical strength or movement, they were a level or even several levels higher than the average person. Such a martial civilization, the future prospects are quite promising. Luo Fan didn't care about his experience in the Lin family fortress at all, his thoughts running wild. So it was here. These two must be the wife and son of that surnamed Lin. Suddenly, Luo Fan's heart skipped a beat. A very familiar feeling came from somewhere in the Lin family fortress, and he knew that these two people were his destiny. Chapter 104. Shattering the void, chaos whirled inside the stone room. There were two people, one big and one small. Among them, the older one was a middle-aged woman who was dressed simply but definitely not shabbily. The younger one was a boy who was about 10 years old. They were obviously the wife and son of that Lin Fan. Luo Fan's sudden appearance was clearly unexpected to the mother and son. The 10-year-old boy seemed to be rather timid. When he saw Luo Fan appear, he was shocked. He shrunk back and hugged his mother, the middle-aged woman. The middle-aged woman's reaction was slightly better. She was shocked at first, then a look of hatred and disdain appeared on her face. She shouted sternly, "I've already said that I don't know anything about the Heavenly Martial Divine chapter. If you're looking for it, you found the wrong person." Her voice was smooth like a pearl, and it carried a strand of awe-inspiring and inviolable righteousness. "I'm not one of Zhuang Zhixian's people, so I don't need to ask you about the Heavenly Martial Divine chapter. The two of you can leave this place with me." Luo Fan's expression did not change at all from the woman's scolding. When the woman heard that, a look of surprise and disbelief appeared on her face. She clearly did not believe Luo Fan's words, but she was also very surprised that Luo Fan would say such a thing. Even the little boy curiously and timidly turned his head to look at Luo Fan. Luo Fan smiled and waved his hand. A gray light appeared on his body. Then, a gray stream of air flew out from his right hand and condensed into a huge, solid, and strong hand that was 3 meters tall. With a light grab, the pair of mother and son were caught in his hand. Heavenly Martial Light, Divine Claw. When the woman saw the gray hand, she could not help but exclaim in disbelief. After the exclamation, the intense vigilance that had always been in her eyes disappeared in an instant. She relaxed her body and tightly hugged the boy, who was about 10 years old. She patted his back and comforted him, allowing the large gray hand to grab the mother and son. This so-called Heavenly Martial Light Divine Claw was, of course, something that Luo Fan had casually simulated. It was a martial art of the Heavenly Martial Divine chapter. This was because Luo Fan was too lazy to talk nonsense to win the mother and son's trust. He directly used his actions to show that he was not someone with ulterior motives who coveted the Heavenly Martial Divine chapter. In fact, there was nothing more powerful than this. I already know the most mysterious method in the Heavenly Martial Divine chapter. Do I still need to covet that ancient book? The Heavenly Martial Divine chapter was a supreme cultivation treasure to the humans in this small thousand world. However, for Luo Fan, the founder of this world, although it was quite mysterious, it was not enough to reach the level of the martial skill. Moreover, it did not contain any secrets. If he wanted to use the martial skill inside, he did not need to practice at all. He could easily do it with just a thought. This Heavenly Martial Light Divine Claw had a nice name and was very mysterious. In fact, it was just a type of energy that was refined and compressed from a certain amount of chaotic yuan qi. After using this technique, the effect that Luo Fan wanted to achieve was obviously easily achieved. In order to obtain a great opportunity, Luo Fan did not use a technique like void teleportation to bring them away. Instead, he brought the mother and son up to a height of 4 to 5 meters according to the performance of the experts of this world. During this process, the large gray hand lightly bumped into the seemingly indestructible ceiling above their heads, instantly creating a large hole. This is indeed the supreme Heavenly Martial Light Divine Claw. Madame Zhang kowtows to Senior. Please save my family's master Lin Jinan. The middle-aged woman turned around on the roof and kowtowed. Seeing that his mother had already kowtowed, the 10-year-old boy also followed suit. Luo Fan naturally knew what was going on. The Heavenly Martial Divine chapter was a divine technique passed down in the Lin family. It was passed down to sons and not daughters, wives and not son-in-law. According to this family rule, the person who knew this technique must have a very close relationship with the Lin family. He did not reply to the woman's pleas and said indifferently, "This is not the place to talk in detail. I will take you to a place, and you will know the whole story." As he spoke, he waved his hand, and the gray hand that was still circling around the mother and son turned into a 3-meter-tall wan bird that carried the two of them. Luo Fan leaped onto the wan bird and pointed. The wan bird carried the three of them into the sky and flew towards the forest in the distance, where the two middle-aged men had perished together with each other. This was just a transformation of the chaotic energy. Other than refining the chaotic energy to a certain degree, there was no other profound meaning to it. The woman was carried by the gray wan bird. Feeling the softness and comfort, she could not help but show a look of shock in her eyes. She muttered to herself. The wan bird's speed was naturally not as fast as Luo Fan's shrinking distance, but it was still extremely fast. After a short while, the three of them arrived at the forest. What happened next was needless to say. When the mother and son saw the corpses of their husband and father, they began to cry mournfully. The scene was so tragic that it made people's hearts wrench. The scene in the forest was already very straightforward. As long as one knew the cause and effect, anyone who saw it would know what was going on. There was no need for Luo Fan to explain. By the time the mother and son collected Lin Jianan's corpse and threw Zhuang Zhixian's corpse into the forest, where there were signs of wild beasts, half a day had already passed. After all this was done, the mother and son came together. When they saw Luo Fan, they both knelt down. The child only cried and did not say a word. The woman cried and said, "Now that the master has passed away, we, the orphans and widows, are unable to take back the Lin family fort. From now on, we have no one to rely on. I hope that Senior will be merciful and help us." As she spoke, she and the child repeatedly kowtowed. "I am a person who has left the world, but I cannot interfere too much with the affairs of the world. If it weren't for the kindness of the Lin family in my early years and the fact that I practiced the heavenly martial divine chapter, I would not have been able to save you." Luo Fan shook his head as if he had a heart of stone. "Senior, please be merciful." How could the woman give up just like that? She could only bitterly beg. Luo Fan ignored her and said that he was a person who had left the world and did not want to interfere with the affairs of the world. After a long time, the tearful boy's eyes lit up. He kowtowed and said, "I, Lin Tianan, am willing to take Senior as my master. I beg Senior to be merciful and accept me as your disciple. I will train hard and pass down the Lin family's divine skill for all eternity." The woman suddenly understood. Luo Fan kept saying that he was a secluded person, a secluded person. Didn't he mean that he had nothing to do with the mother and son, and couldn't stand up for them? Then, if her son worshipped him as a teacher, wouldn't everything be solved? She hurriedly kowtowed and begged Luo Fan to accept her son as his disciple. She wanted him to help the Lin family pass down the Lin family's divine skill, so that the Lin family's legacy would not be lost. Luo Fan saw that they had finally reacted and reluctantly said, "Although your reaction was a bit slow, you still reacted. Your talent is not bad, but you have not reached my standards for accepting a disciple. Originally, I did not want to accept you as my disciple, but I have received great kindness from the Lin family. Seeing that you're the only successor of the Lin family, I will accept you as an unofficial disciple. As for whether or not you can become a direct disciple, that will depend on your future performance." Luo Fan nodded and said, although he was only an unofficial disciple, Lin Tianan and his mother were extremely grateful. They knelt on the ground and cried in joy. With the title of master and disciple, everything was naturally easy. He once again used the simulated heavenly martial light god's claw to transform into a phoenix and return to the Lin family fort. The Lin family fort was originally the foundation of Lin Jianan, so Lin Zhang was naturally very familiar with it. She also knew who had participated in Zhuang Zhixian's rebellion and who was the main culprit. Therefore, under Lin Zhang's instructions, Luo Fan easily found the people who had participated in the rebellion and executed them in front of everyone. This ruthlessly shocked those who had other thoughts. This was simply killing a chicken with a butcher's knife. There was nothing more to say. It only took one night for the Lin family fort to return to its original master. Lin Tianan and his mother were both sad and happy about this change. They were even more grateful to Luo Fan and gave Luo Fan absolute respect. The heavenly martial divine chapter is a peerless martial art that transcends the realm of saints. It is a martial art that the Lin family's ancestor comprehended from observing the evolution of heaven and earth. You must remember that this martial art is precious enough to make anyone go crazy. In the future, when you travel the martial world, you must not reveal a single trace of this martial art. Otherwise, it will bring disaster to you and your loved ones. Luo Fan stood on the Lin family fort's training field and said to Lin Tianan, who was bowing in front of him. Lin Tianan's expression was respectful. It was obvious that he was listening attentively to Luo Fan's lecture. Hearing Luo Fan's serious expression, Lin Tian hurriedly said, "Teacher, I will remember." Luo Fan completely understood Lin Tian's mentality. He knew that in the past, he was like a god that could easily knead the rebels. His ability to fly in the sky and burrow into the ground had already been deeply engraved in Lin Tian's heart. At this time, Lin Tian already worshipped him to the extreme. He completely placed Su Yun on a peerless position. Every word Su Yun said would enter his ears and be remembered in the depths of his heart. Before learning the Heavenly Martial Divine chapter, I will first talk to you about the realms of martial arts. In this world, the path of martial arts is divided into 3 big realms. They are the mortal realm, the saint realm, and the transcendent realm. Among them, each big realm is divided into 9 small realms. In total, there are 27 small realms. After reaching the 9th realm of the transcendent realm, if you break through again, you will be able to break through the void, transcend the small world, and directly enter the world of chaos. Luo Fan's words were very calm, but there was a sense of pride in them. In reality, what Luo Fan was talking about was not the division of martial arts in this world. Although the martial arts of this world had been developed for tens of thousands of years, it had not been developed to the point of perfection. There were still many flaws. According to the Heavenly Martial Divine chapter, martial arts are divided into 2 big realms, the mortal realm and the saint realm. Among them, each realm was divided into 6 small realms. In total, there were 12 small realms. Once a martial artist reached the 12th realm and broke through again, it would be the transcendent realm. That was already the Heavenly Martial Divine chapter, the highest realm of martial arts in this world. Beyond that, there were no more realms. There was only one sentence. Understand the world, understand the mysteries, break through the void, and achieve eternal life. Chapter 105, where the opportunity arrives, innate immortality. Teacher, I'm already at the 9th level of the mortal realm. I should be qualified to learn combat skills. When are you going to teach me combat skills? It's so boring to train my body and chi all day long. A 17 or 18-year-old youth stood in the middle of the training field and said to the calm middle-aged man sitting at the side of the training field with anticipation, "You're still lacking a bit. The mortal realm is only a process of laying the foundation. We'll talk about it when you've transcended the mortal realm." The gentle middle-aged man smiled slightly, but did not change his decision. Now, 8 years had passed since Luo Fan accepted Lin Tian as an unofficial disciple. The boy inside the training field was the grown-up Lin Tian, and the one beside the training field was, of course, Luo Fan, who had changed his appearance. In these 8 years, Luo Fan could be said to have given his all to Lin Tian. Although he only accepted Lin Tian as an unofficial disciple, he treated Lin Tian even more thoughtfully than he treated his own direct disciple. Even Hong Junback then could not enjoy the treatment that Lin Tian had received in these 8 years. Although Hong Jun's aptitude and cultivation far surpassed Luo Fan's, and he did not need Luo Fan's personal guidance, it was more because of Luo Fan's attention to Lin Tian and his attention to the great opportunity that he had faintly revealed. However, in the past 8 years, Lin Tian's cultivation level had increased, but Luo Fan's opportunity had not even the slightest clue. It was as if it had never happened. Luo Fan was already familiar with the rhythm of life in the untainted land. To him, 8 years was equivalent to a nap. Even if he did not find the opportunity, he was not anxious. He was still carefree. When he was free, he would give pointers to Lin Tian, and when he was busy, he would adjust his breathing and strengthen his FALE. But, teacher, with my current realm, I could be considered a first-class expert in the martial arts world. If other people had my current cultivation, they would have wandered the martial arts world for decades and made a name for themselves. But now, I don't even know any combat skills. I only know some ordinary martial arts. As Lin Tian and Luo Fan became more and more familiar, he also began to express his opinions and dissatisfaction in front of Luo Fan. There were dozens of small countries on this continent, and wars broke out almost every day somewhere on the continent. Because of this, the people of the continent had a strong sense of martial prowess. The joy of gratitude and revenge had seeped into the hearts of everyone on the continent. Even an ordinary child was no exception. The fact that Lin Tian Nan was able to endure until now to voice out his doubts was already very rare. Luo Fan faintly smiled. With just one sentence, he dismissed Lin Tian Nan because they don't know that there are realms above martial arts, but you do. As he spoke, he waved his hand, signaling for Lin Tian Nan to continue cultivating his inner qi to strengthen his body. Hearing Luo Fan's words, what else could Lin Tian Nan do? He could only sulk and continue to cultivate. For a moment, the martial arts field flashed and Yuan Qi surged. Luo Fan faintly smiled. It looked like he was observing Lin Tian Nan, but his mind was actually focused on his own body, observing every change in it. Lin Zhongshi requests an audience with Senior. Not long after, a mellow voice sounded from outside the martial arts field and entered Luo Fan's ears. Hearing this, Luo Fan immediately knew that it was Lin Tian Nan's mother, Lin Zhongshi. With a wave of his hand, the martial arts field's door silently opened. He said, "Madam, please enter." Lin Zhongshi had always treated Luo Fan with respect and politeness, not daring to show the slightest bit of disrespect. Senior, Tian Nan is already 18 years old. It's time for him to start a family. I want to arrange a marriage for him to continue the bloodline of our Lin family. I don't know if this will affect his cultivation. Lin Zhongshi entered the martial arts field and asked Lin Tian Nan to leave. She then carefully spoke to Luo Fan. Luo Fan smiled and said, Tian Nan is not cultivating the virgin technique, so of course it won't affect him in the slightest. It's good for Tian Nan to get married and continue the bloodline. In the future, his cultivation will become more and more difficult. If he doesn't start a family now, I'm afraid he won't have the time to do so in the future. As he spoke, Luo Fan suddenly had a sudden impulse for the first time in 8 years. It was as if doing so would give him great benefits in obtaining a great opportunity. With this feeling, Luo Fan's heart moved. He knew that what he had been doing these past few years was correct, and that he wasn't wasting time. However, he didn't use the yin-yang test method to calculate it. In any case, he wouldn't be able to calculate it. Since he was already on the road, as long as he continued walking, he would be able to reach his goal. There was no need to waste energy. With this impulse, Luo Fan was even more concerned about Lin Tian Nan's marriage. It was rare for him to discuss it with Lin Zhongshi. Luo Fan's change in attitude naturally made Lin Zhongshi very happy. She thought that Luo Fan's feelings for Lin Tian Nan had improved, and that Tian Nan's future was limitless. The Lin family fort could be considered a little famous in the Sanqing Kingdom. Although there was a crisis 8 years ago, it only took less than 10 days to subside. This was the power of the Lin family. As a result, when Lin Zhongshi released the news that she was going to arrange for Lin Tian Nan's marriage, countless people came forward. In less than 100 days, Lin Zhongshi decided on a candidate and sent Lin Tian Nan to the bridal room. It seems like my opportunity is about to arrive. Luo Fan sat cross-legged on a cloud in the sky. He held a cup of wine in one hand and took a sip. Looking at the lively and joyous scene below, a smile appeared on his face. One day, 3 months later, Lin Tian Nan came to see Luo Fan with a face full of happiness. Luo Fan's heart trembled. He suddenly felt an impulse again. In the blink of an eye, he knew that his opportunity had arrived. He hurriedly called Lin Tian Nan in for questioning. Teacher, Jie is already pregnant. I'm going to be a father. After Lin Tian Nan greeted Luo Fan, the first sentence that came out of his mouth made Luo Fan's mind feel as if a bolt of lightning had flashed through it. So that's how it is. So that's my opportunity. Ha! I have succeeded. Countless thoughts flashed through Luo Fan's mind, and he couldn't help but laugh. After 8 years of waiting, he had finally obtained the most beautiful fruit. As if the conditions were right, Luo Fan didn't even need to calculate. He already knew where his opportunity was and why he couldn't calculate it. All of this was because of the innate, inextinguishable spirit light that had been in his mind for more than a yuan hui. More than a yuan hui ago, Luo Fan found an innate, inextinguishable spirit light at the place where he met Ao Yin and Ao Lai. Because it rejected him too much, he suppressed it in the depths of his mind, hoping to use his own mind to subdue this innate, inextinguishable spirit light. However, after more than a yuan hui, the progress of subduing it was very average. It could even be said that it had stagnated. Ever since Luo Fan arrived at Buzhou Mountain and was stimulated by the aura of Buzhou Mountain, he suddenly realized that the inextinguishable spirit light's rejection of him had been reduced by half. After more than a yuan hui, this inextinguishable spirit light was as stubborn as a smelly and hard stone in a latrine pit. The remaining half of the inextinguishable spirit light's rejection of Luo Fan did not weaken in the slightest. After more than a yuan hui, the situation was still the same as when he first broke through. There was no progress at all. It was as if reducing the rejection by half was the biggest concession that the inextinguishable spirit light could make. This made Luo Fan think that if he wanted to subdue this inextinguishable spirit light, he might not be able to do it even after thousands of yuan hui. But now, through Lin Tian Nan, Luo Fan finally thought of a way to subdue this inextinguishable spirit light. If he followed this method, perhaps he would only need a few tens of thousands of years to completely subdue this inextinguishable spirit light. This amount of time, compared to the previous yuan hui, where he could not see a trace of progress, was already as fast as flying through the everlasting palace. With a thought, Luo Fan only left behind a sentence. Master has something to do and needs to leave for a period of time. You need to work hard in your cultivation and quickly become a saint. After giving it to Lin Tian Nan, he teleported away from the Lin family fortress. In a flash, he arrived on the platform in the middle of the lightning pool. Sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed, the chant for the yin-yang calculation method flowed through his mind. His hands moved quickly, and in an instant, specks of light quickly flashed through his mind. If he did not have any primer and only wanted to use his intuition to calculate, because of the inextinguishable spirit light's indestructible characteristic, he would not be able to calculate anything with his current cultivation level. But since he already knew that he had to subdue this inextinguishable spirit light, he could calculate around the indestructible characteristic of the inextinguishable spirit light. Naturally, he would be successful in every endeavor. After a long time, the specks of light disappeared and a happy smile appeared on Luo Fan's face. Through calculation, he had already calculated the specific method of subduing this inextinguishable spirit light. He even created the chant and the path of cultivation needed to do so. With a move of his mind, Luo Fan went deep into the world of his sea of consciousness and merged with his soul. With just a thought, the inextinguishable spirit light that was suppressed in the depths of his soul, which was at the bottom of Buzhou Mountain, suddenly appeared outside of Buzhou Mountain. The dusky light constantly emitted a mysterious aura. As soon as it left the suppression of Luo Fan's soul, it was as if it had been awakened from a dream. It quickly swam around in Luo Fan's sea of consciousness, leaving behind long afterimages in the air. In the blink of an eye, it had traveled through every inch of Luo Fan's sea of consciousness, as if it was looking for an exit. However, this was Luo Fan's sea of consciousness, which was completely under his control. As long as Luo Fan was unwilling, how could this light find an exit? Luo Fan smiled as he looked at the spiritual light that didn't diminish in the slightest and didn't reduce its rejection towards him. With a thought, rays of grayish-brown light rushed out from the Buzhou Mountain that was formed by his soul. An indescribable pain instantly appeared in his soul. The entire Buzhou Mountain that was formed by his soul shook violently under this pain. Even the entire sea of consciousness was shaking violently, as if it was about to collapse. This pain was a soul-tearing pain. This pain was strong enough to make anyone's soul collapse. Chapter 106. The Way of Heaven and Earth, Reincarnation. 1. The pain that was enough to make one's spirit collapse disappeared. Only then did Luo Fan's spirit, which had transformed into Buzhou Mountain, gradually stabilize. The entire sea of consciousness, which was like a complete world, also slowly stabilized. I didn't think it would be so painful to cut such a little bit. There was only such a thought in Luo Fan's mind. What Luo Fan did just now was to cut his spirit. From his extremely powerful spirit, he separated a palm-sized, almost insignificant part of his spirit, which was the palm-sized Buzhou Mountain that was currently floating outside Buzhou Mountain. After a long time, Luo Fan slowly recovered from the pain that was enough to make one's spirit collapse. After sensing his own spirit, he found that under the nourishment of the earthly immortal's fruit of way through the mysterious connection, the little bit of spirit he had lost was rapidly recovering. Only then did he confirm that this little bit of damage to his spirit did not affect him at all. Only then did he completely relax. He focused his attention on the part of his spirit that had been separated. The originally very vague and obscure feeling became more obvious. That feeling was like he had split into two and suddenly had two bodies, one big and one small. After carefully savoring this feeling for a long time, Luo Fan changed his mind. This was the sea of consciousness. It was a space that was opened in Luo Fan's Niwen Palace. With a thought, this sea of consciousness world changed automatically. Suddenly, an invisible force appeared in the void and firmly fixed the innate, inextinguishable spiritual light that was still moving quickly in the sea of consciousness world. Then, the palm-sized Buzhou Mountain suddenly exploded and turned into a grayish-brown mist. Like a hungry tiger, it suddenly pounced and wrapped around the innate, inextinguishable spiritual light. The innate, inextinguishable spiritual light was still rejecting Luo Fan, but after all, it had been suppressed for a long time, so it had gradually become accustomed to the feeling of being wrapped by Luo Fan's godly soul. Although this godly soul was many times weaker than the godly soul that had suppressed it before, it still didn't struggle much. It just stayed inside the godly soul, shrinking into a ball. It was as if it had lost its spirit and seemed to have fallen into a deep sleep again. Seeing this, Luo Fan was very satisfied. With a thought, this little bit of spirit wrapped around the inextinguishable spiritual light and suddenly rushed out of the sea of consciousness world from a mysterious location. With another rush, it had already arrived outside of his body and floated in front of him. Opening his eyes, he stared at this little bit of spirit and the innate, inextinguishable spiritual light inside it. In Luo Fan's mind, a mysterious incantation slowly flowed through his mind. This was the most suitable incantation that Luo Fan had deduced through the yin-yang test method. As this incantation flashed through his mind, the lightning pool below suddenly fluctuated violently. Huge pillars of lightning rushed out from it and continuously condensed in the air. In the blink of an eye, they turned into thousands of tiny purple threads that were like spider silk. Slowly, they outlined an incomparably complicated and incomparably mysterious three-dimensional talisman. The three-dimensional talisman was shaped like an irregular sphere, but also like an undeveloped embryo, and more like a silk cocoon that had turned into a butterfly. It twisted and changed constantly, stretching and shrinking, its shape unpredictable. It wrapped the spirit and the innate, inextinguishable spiritual light inside it. At this very moment, the innate, inextinguishable divine light seemed to have sensed the impending disaster. It suddenly came to life, struggling crazily and attacking the divine soul that was wrapping around it, as well as the three-dimensional talisman formed by the earth element divine thunder outside of it. However, this three-dimensional talisman was deduced by Luo Fan through the yin-yang test method. It was the most suitable talisman to seal the innate, inextinguishable spiritual light. How could it be broken so easily? In an instant, the entire talisman flashed with a purple light and suppressed the innate, inextinguishable spiritual light. It was as if it was locked by an incomparably powerful force. No matter how it struggled, it could not break free from the wrapping of the spirit, let alone escape. Seeing this, Luo Fan smiled slightly. From his earthly, immortal fruit of Tao, a little magical power unit broke free. Under the effect of the mantra that was still flowing in his mind and will, it flowed through his body in a mysterious path, gradually dispersing and turning into a ball of golden light. He suddenly slapped it on the three-dimensional talisman. As the golden light slapped into the talisman, in an instant, the three-dimensional talisman flickered with golden light, as if it was covered with a layer of golden hard shell. It made the three-dimensional talisman look as if it had become a complete and unbreakable whole. With a wave of his hand, the golden fruit came to a height of 3 inches above his palm. It rotated slightly, emitting a faint vitality. Whether it succeeds or not, it depends on you. Luo Fan murmured with an inexplicable expression on his face. What he was going to do next was of great importance. It made his Taoist heart, which had been painstakingly tempered for over a period of time, unable to remain calm and indifferent. As soon as he finished speaking, his mind moved, and his figure instantly disappeared from the platform. When he reappeared, he was already in the Lin family fort where he had lived for 8 years. With a turn of his mind, the interior of the Lin family fort, big and small, was reflected in his mind and will. In an instant, he found his target. It was Lin Tian-Nan's pregnant wife, the Jia, that Lin Tian-Nan had mentioned. Hiding in the void, with a careful look, he knew that she had just become pregnant. The fetus was only a ball of vitality and did not have any spiritual consciousness, nor did it produce a soul. Only then did he relax. With a wave of his hand, the palm-sized golden fruit that was suspended in his palm was thrown into her abdomen. In the blink of an eye, it had rushed into her abdomen and fused with the fetus. In an instant, a very wonderful feeling came from the small ball of spiritual consciousness inside the fruit into Luo Fan's mind and will. It was as if he had come to the safest and warmest place in the world. A kind of lazy feeling arose from the bottom of his heart, and he was unwilling to move in the slightest. The fetus and the golden fruit were incomparably compatible, and Luo Fan's years of waiting had not been in vain. The mysteries of life are really mysterious and inconceivable. Feeling all kinds of wonderful feelings, Luo Fan couldn't help but exclaim in his heart. Through that little bit of spiritual consciousness, Luo Fan could also feel that the moment the golden fruit fused with the fetus, the innate, inextinguishable spirit aura seemed to have changed a little. As if it had felt something, it slightly opened its arms and absorbed the mysterious mysteries of creation from the mother's fetus. Feeling this change, Luo Fan's face finally revealed a relieved smile. This was the method that Luo Fan had thought of. The birth, growth, and death of life was the most mysterious process in the world. This process also contained endless principles, including the natural evolution of the great Tao of heaven and earth. Although the innate, inextinguishable spirit aura was mysterious and unpredictable, compared to the great Tao of heaven and earth, it was far inferior. At this moment, Luo Fan had wrapped a bit of his spiritual consciousness around the innate, inextinguishable spirit aura, because he wanted to use the natural evolution of the great Tao of heaven and earth to combine the two unknowingly through the cycle of life and death. In the end, the two would completely fuse into one. At that time, because the innate, inextinguishable spirit aura had fused with a bit of Luo Fan's spiritual consciousness, it would naturally be branded with Luo Fan's brand, which was equivalent to being subdued. This would allow Luo Fan to truly obtain the innate, inextinguishable spirit aura. At that time, whether he wanted to refine it into a natural spiritual treasure or directly refine it into his spiritual consciousness, he would be able to obtain the ability to never die, and never be destroyed. This would be extremely beneficial to his future growth. After Luo Fan placed the golden fruit into Jie Air's stomach and reincarnated as Lin Tiannan's son, he left the Lin family fortress and flew high up into the sky. Standing on the sun-like ball of light, he quietly looked down at the vast continent that was tens of thousands of miles wide. There were constant wars on this continent, and lives were being lost almost every moment. In the few seconds that Luo Fan had been here, thousands of humans and tens of thousands of other living beings had died. After these lives died, their souls were only able to leave their bodies before being attacked by the endless chaotic energy that filled the world. In a short while, their souls completely collapsed and disappeared, leaving no trace of them in the world. It seems that I still need to establish the yin-yang cycle of reincarnation. Luo Fan thought to himself. This was not because his merciful heart was acting up. In these 8 years, he had seen too many souls dissipate. If he wanted to act up, he would have done so long ago. The reason why he wanted to do this was because if he wanted to subdue the innate, inextinguishable spirit aura, it would not be possible to do so in just one reincarnation. According to Luo Fan's previous calculations, this process would require the golden fruit to reincarnate tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of times. Of course, Luo Fan could personally look for the operation every time he reincarnated, but the number of reincarnations would be too great, and it would be too troublesome. It was better to establish the yin-yang cycle of reincarnation so that all living beings on this continent would automatically reincarnate. This would also make the minor kiliacosm more complete, and through countless reincarnations, he could even cultivate some talents who could enter the untainted land. This was the best of both worlds. Why not? With this idea in mind, Luo Fan, who did not have much scruples, naturally would not let it go. His mind moved slightly, and he shouted softly, "Where's Wuji Boy?" As he shouted, the Wuji Boy, who was hidden in the void and merged with the body of the Wuji Palace in the void, appeared out of thin air in front of him. He bowed and said, "Wuji Boy respectfully awaits Master's orders." Luo Fan said lightly, "Drive the body of the palace to this place and collect an entire tributary of the Yellow Springs." As he said this, a bit of spiritual light rushed out of his finger and drilled into the forehead of the Wuji Boy, turning into a group of memories. It was the method and route to a place that was 30 million miles away from Buzhou Mountain. The reason why Luo Fan knew that place was because he saw in the memories of the tangible talisman ghost that there was a very small tributary of the Yellow Springs at that place, and there was a huge number of invisible talisman ghosts in it, which was suitable for Luo Fan to set up the yin-yang cycle of reincarnation. Yes, the Wuji Boy bowed and said. After that, the figure of the Wuji Boy dispersed and merged with the body of the Wuji Palace in the void again. Chapter 107. The Great Tao of Heaven and Earth, Reincarnation 2. Although this minor kiliacosm was countless levels lower than the primordial world, it was a complete world after all. It was a complete world, and it had boundless space. Therefore, in this minor kiliacosm, although only a certain volume of space was perfect and could bear the existence of land, there was also an endless void. In this minor kiliacosm, in addition to this continent with a radius of tens of millions of miles, it was infinitely far and extremely deep in the void. However, there were countless places for Luo Fan to use. In this respect, the minor kiliacosm had the transfer to shape the yin and yang reincarnation. There was enough space to serve as a transfer station for souls. Luo Fan came to the only continent in the minor kiliacosm, thought for a while, and decided on the plan. He covered it with his left hand, and all kinds of materials rushed out of the sleeve universe in his left sleeve. Among them, a gray Taoist fire ignited in his right hand, igniting the countless materials that rushed out of the sleeve universe. The entire minor kiliacosm was under Luo Fan's control, but he could decide the distribution of these materials at will. As a result, in the blink of an eye, he had created a vast, dusky sea of fire that seemed to contain some mysterious principles in the dark and deep void. At first, this sea of fire only had a radius of 10,000 feet. However, as time passed, as the materials that Luo fans sent out increased, and as the Taoist fire burned, the area also continued to increase. Time passed day by day. In the blink of an eye, 49 days had passed. Over the past few days, this gray sea of fire had expanded to a radius of 10,000 miles, almost to the point where it was boundless. It had reached 1,000th of the size of the continent above. At this moment, Luo Fan's mind moved. He raised his hand and gently waved. The void distorted, and a stream of yellow spring was born from the void. It came to the sky above the sea of fire, and as if there was a huge drop, it instantly turned into a downpour, pouring down everywhere in the sea of fire. After 49 days in the mini Kiliacosm, Limitless Boy had already driven the Limitless Palace to the location indicated by Luo Fan. He had even collected the tributary of the underworld indicated by Luo Fan into this mini Kiliacosm. Along with the addition of the Yellow Springs, Luo Fan's mind flashed with a profound and unfathomable mantra. Following this mantra, the mini Kiliacosm changed automatically. Countless three-dimensional talisman shadows appeared out of thin air and instantly wrapped the sea of fire. These three-dimensional talisman shadows were like the 12,960 living creatures on the continent. They twisted and deformed in the flames of Wei, as if the 12,960 living creatures were running in it. With this infinite three-dimensional talisman, the sea of fire was constantly swallowed, and gradually strange changes occurred. A little black light was produced in the sea of fire, gradually growing and diffusing. Unknowingly, it filled the entire sea of fire, turning the sea of fire black. The spring water of the underworld was condensed from an endless amount of heavy and turbid yin qi. After being poured on the flames of Wei that had been changed by the three-dimensional talisman, it was like pouring oil on the fire, making this mysterious flames of Wei soar 10 times in an instant. The blazing flames of Wei spread up. In the blink of an eye, it followed the spring water of the underworld that had entered the three-dimensional talisman, completely igniting the torrential rain of the underworld in the void. The yellow springs that gushed out of the void turned into a black river of fire in the blink of an eye. Waves of mysterious aura seeped out from it. There were countless invisible talisman ghosts in the yellow springs. The moment the transformed flames of Wei ignited the yellow springs, these invisible talisman ghosts seemed to feel an immense pressure. It was as if a catastrophe was about to befall them. They struggled frantically and attacked everything around them. But no matter how hard they tried, they could not change their fates. In the burning of the flames of Wei, these invisible talisman ghosts screamed miserably and gradually melted. Their bodies and spiritual consciousnesses shrank and disappeared under the burning of the flames of Wei. Gradually, they turned into spherical, heavy, and turbidine talismans that were lifted from the yellow springs. Obviously, this small tributary did not have enough invisible talisman ghosts to give birth to tangible talisman ghosts. Therefore, there were no invisible talisman ghosts in it. Therefore, nothing could resist the burning of the flames of Wei. As time passed, more and more heavy and turbidine talismans were lifted from the yellow springs and piled up in the void. Gradually, they filled the entire sky above the yellow springs. Under the illumination of the black light produced by the flames of Wei, these spherical talismans shone with a deep and serene hue. It was as if countless eyes were blinking in the void. In Luo Fan's mind, the Tao Heart mantra's mnemonic chant continued to circulate, and the magic power within his body also began to circulate along a mysterious and unpredictable path. As the magic power flowed, the void of the mini Kiliacosm kept changing. Beneath the continent, the void that had been imperfect and could not even bear the weight of land was slowly changing its laws, as if a law that was completely different from the continent above was being born, a law that could bear a law that was completely different from the physical continent, and yet was immeasurably mysterious. The yellow springs continued to pour down from the void and were incessantly ignited by the flames of Wei, before merging into the mysterious and strange sea of fire. After an unknown amount of time, the yellow springs in the void finally poured down completely and merged into the sea of fire. The sea of fire was also filled with hundreds of millions of heavy and turbidine talismans. Like hundreds of millions of pairs of eyes, they dotted the void, appearing exceptionally mysterious and magnificent. Within the sea of fire, the endless three-dimensional talismans, like all living creatures, completely fused with the sea of fire the moment the yellow springs disappeared. No other impurities could be seen in the sea of fire. Even the various material objects, the yellow springs that poured down from the void, completely turned into nothingness. The entire sea of fire became incomparably pure. The pitch-black flames burned the void, unscrupulously revealing the endless mysteries contained within. Luo Fan's mind calmed down, and the pitch-black sea of flames suddenly extinguished without any warning. There wasn't even a trace of aftermath, as if the sea of flames didn't exist in the first place. It was extremely mysterious and unfathomable. After the flames of Wei were extinguished, what was left in place was a strange existence that spanned thousands of miles. It was a silk cloth with a circumference of thousands of miles, seemingly illusory and real. A scene that seemed to be ordinary, yet was actually profound and unfathomable to the extreme, was branded on the silk cloth. It was boundless darkness, and within it, there seemed to be countless dark creatures flashing and struggling. It also seemed like a supreme existence was holding a brush and evolving the infinite yin-yang reincarnation great Tao. The entire huge silk cloth was embedded in the void, like a tattoo that was naturally born in the void. It was extremely mysterious and wonderful. This huge silk cloth could also be said to be an extremely mysterious Dharma artifact. This Dharma artifact was not refined using the restriction refining method that Luo Fan had comprehended from Guangpu's true body. Instead, it was directly inserted into the three-dimensional talismans, and through the flames of Wei, it was refined with countless treasures of heaven and earth. There were not many restrictions, and it did not need to be refined to unleash the supreme power of the Dharma artifact. It was not an independent existence, but a part of the Void Wuji Palace. However, it could be regarded as a supplement to the Void Wuji Palace. It was an accessory to the Void Wuji Palace. Thank you for your generous gift, Master. Wuji can improve further. At this moment, in the void, a young man appeared out of thin air in front of Luo Fan and bowed. This young man had red lips, white teeth, and jade-like skin. Looking at his eyebrows, he was the grown-up Wuji boy. This piece of silk cloth was fused with a tributary of Yellow Springs, containing hundreds of millions of tons of Yellow Springs water. In addition, most of the materials that Luo Fan had collected over a period of time and the three-dimensional talismans contained endless mysteries. It was the most luxurious Dharma artifact that Luo Fan had refined since he came to the primordial world. The materials used and the mysteries contained were probably far inferior to the G-Square Seal, the Void Wuji Palace, the Yellow Turban Strongman Emperor, and other Dharma artifacts. Such a Dharma artifact was used to supplement the Void Wuji Palace. Although Luo Fan's purpose was not to use it to improve the Void Wuji Palace, the mysteries contained in the materials were enough to improve the Void Wuji Palace. It even made the Wuji boy's original appearance suddenly grow up. This was an unintentional gain, an unexpected surprise. Seeing the Wuji boy's body change greatly, and at the same time, the aura he exuded also changed greatly, becoming more mature and more intelligent. Luo Fan couldn't help but be overjoyed. He smiled and said, "This is an unexpected surprise. You go and get the tangible talisman ghost." The tangible talisman ghost was thrown by Luo Fan into a Yin cave somewhere in the mainland. It had been more than a period of time, and it had already developed a vague spiritual consciousness. It was enough to be used. "Yes, Master." The Wuji boy bowed and disappeared without a trace. With another flash, he reappeared in front of Luo Fan with a dark golden, fist-sized ball in his hand. Luo Fan raised his hand, and the ball fell into his hand. The Wuji boy bowed and disappeared into the void. He had once again merged with the void Wuji palace. Luo Fan's mind moved slightly. Two golden lights shot out from his eyes and instantly shined on the origin of the ball. He knew that this was the double turbid yang talisman that had undergone a great change after a period of time. It contained a new spiritual consciousness. I don't know if this is good or bad for you, but I need you now, so I can only do this. Luo Fan sighed and raised his hand. A speck of light containing boundless information rushed out of his hand and went straight into the dark golden sphere. As the light entered, the dark golden ball could not withstand the information contained in the light. It suddenly exploded and turned into a dark golden cloud. The cloud stretched and shrank, and there was a stronger and stronger vitality coming out from it. There were even traces of heavy yin qi coming out from it. They were compressed, transformed, absorbed, and fused by this strong vitality. As it absorbed and fused with the heavy yin qi, the golden cloud continued to grow. Gradually, after a short while, the dark golden cloud had already expanded to a radius of 10 feet. At this time, there was no longer a trace of heavy and turbid yin qi in the dark golden cloud. It was obvious that it had been completely absorbed. After a while, the dark golden cloud suddenly shrank, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into a middle-aged emperor wearing a crown, a black dragon robe, and a dark and solemn face. He looked extremely dignified and terrifying. After the middle-aged emperor appeared, he bowed to Luo Fan, but did not say a word. Luo Fan did not care. He said calmly, "From now on, you are the Ghost King. You are in charge of the yin and yang reincarnation of this world." "Yes," the middle-aged man with a black face said. His body turned into a dark golden light and rushed into the silk cloth that looked like a tattoo engraved in the void. He instantly merged into it. As the middle-aged man merged into it, the black picture on the silk cloth, which was like a deep and serene void, instantly turned into a huge vortex. Chapter 108. Underworld. Marshal Y as the Ghost King entered the magic tool. The entire spirit space produced a weak yet mysterious vibration, as if some mysterious and incredible change had already occurred. Seeing the Ghost King's posture in the center of the silk vortex, which seemed to be suppressing the void, Luo Fan raised his hand and pressed down lightly. An invisible force appeared out of thin air, and the hundreds of millions of turbid yin talismans in the void, which were like stars, suddenly sank. In an instant, like rain, they fell directly onto the silk cloth. In the blink of an eye, the hundreds of millions of turbid yin talismans had all merged into the silk cloth. As these turbid yin talismans merged, the image on the silk cloth also changed. The huge vortex underwent a huge change in an instant, constantly evolving and condensing. From a complete, huge, and dense vortex, it turned into a shape similar to the Milky Way. The black vortex split into 36 spiral arms, which slowly rotated above the gray curtain of cloth. On each of the spiral arms, there were millions of the same terrifying and ferocious creatures that were filled with majesty. 36 spiral arms had 36 creatures of different colors and shapes on them. These 36 creatures were the 36 ghost envoys that corresponded to the cycle of yin and yang. These 36 ghost envoys were, in fact, the same type of creature. It was a technique that Luo Fan had comprehended from the turbid yin talisman of the invisible talisman ghost. Using the turbid yin talismans as materials, it was a type of creature that was between a weapon spirit and an invisible talisman ghost. They were one with a magic tool, but they were an important supplement to the magic tool. Souls have a place to rely on. Good and evil are repaid. Heaven and earth have spirits. The cycle of yin and yang. Luo Fan let out a soft cry. This voice was not loud, nor did it contain much power. However, it contained a mysterious truth. In an instant, it spread throughout the entire spirit space, causing every inch of space in the spirit space to vibrate mysteriously along with this shout. Everyone and every living creature in the spirit space instantly felt a kind of supreme pressure descend from the sky, directly imposing on their souls. At this moment, they suddenly felt as if countless pairs of eyes were staring at them, recording everything they had done and controlling their fates. At the same time, an indescribable joy emerged from their subconscious. That kind of joy came purely from the instinct of life. It was because his soul had something to rely on, and his life had been elevated to a higher level. It was a sudden kind of joy, along with Luo Fan's shout. The magical artifact in front of him suddenly emitted a myriad of dark golden light, and the spiral-shaped whirlpool formed by the 36 spiral arms seemed to have come to life, becoming agile. A huge mansion appeared around the Ghost King, connected to 36 spiral arms. Above the mansion, there were two extremely profound words that seemed to contain endless mysteries. Underworld. These two words were written in a language created by Pangu. Standing on the mansion, they were erratic and ever-changing, as if they were evolving countless living creatures, but also as if they were explaining endless truths. This was the name of this magical artifact. With the confirmation of this name, the 36 ghost servants began to perform their respective duties, carrying out endless work. Among them, there was a ghost servant from the Oxhead and Horseface reception department, who left this magical artifact through some mysterious passage. After a while, he returned to the underworld with all kinds of souls and handed them over to the Black and White Impermanence Interrogation Department. The Black and White Impermanence Interrogation Department examined these souls, left different imprints, and handed them over to the City God Judge Decision Department. In this way, the 35 departments were constantly divided and converged. Finally, all the information was gathered and handed over to the Ghost King, who would be sent to the Reincarnation Department. The memories of the countless souls would be erased, and they would be sent back to be reincarnated as living creatures. Thousands of living creatures died in this world at every moment. As soon as this magical artifact began to operate, more and more souls were guided into the underworld. After going through various complicated procedures, they were either punished, rewarded, or reincarnated as humans, or reincarnated as animals, or even turned into plants. It could be predicted that from now on, the plants in this minor kiliocosm that originally did not have souls would have souls. They would truly have spirits. With just a glance, one could tell that the setup of the underworld was complicated and had reached a point where it could not be any more complicated. Its efficiency would definitely not be very high. However, Luo Fan had no intention of changing it. In fact, such a setting was not set up by Luo Fan at will. After all, the reincarnation of living creatures was related to the final direction of the civilization in this minor kiliocosm and the future of this world. No matter how cautious he was, it would not be too much. The yin-yang reincarnation cycle had already been established. With a slight thought, Luo Fan teleported and left the underworld. He arrived at the ball of light that acted as the sun above the continent. He lowered his head and looked down. He could clearly see every corner of this continent. He could also clearly see that after the underworld was successfully operating, the souls were guided and sent back to be reincarnated. In this way, this world is more complete. Luo Fan smiled. His figure flashed, and he landed in the Lin family fortress that he had lived in for 8 years. With a slight thought, he knew that he had spent nearly 10 months setting up the yin-yang reincarnation cycle. At this time, Lin Tiannan's son was about to be born. He has actually transcended and entered sainthood. Looks like his aptitude is not too bad. Luo Fan's mind moved. He discovered that Lin Tiannan had actually broken through the 9th level of the mortal realm and entered the saint realm within these 10 months. Teacher, you are finally here. Now that I have transcended and entered sainthood, I can learn combat skills, right? After entering the saint realm, Lin Tiannan's senses had greatly increased. He immediately discovered Luo Fan's return and hurriedly went forward to greet him. Luo Fan smiled and said, I didn't think that you would be able to break through in such a short period of time. It must be because of the anxiety and joy you have been feeling these past few days that you have improved so much. Although Luo Fan used a question, his tone was very certain. It was obvious that he was very sure of his guess. Teacher is wise. It is as I said. Lin Tian, Nan said with a face full of admiration. Fine, since you have already entered sainthood, there is no need for me to stay here. After a few days, I will teach you the remaining cultivation methods and combat skills of the Heavenly Martial Divine chapter. I will leave. Luo Fan changed the topic and said, the reason why he accepted Lin Tian Nan as a disciple in name was because Lin Tian Nan had a great opportunity for him, which was related to the key to his Tao. Now that the opportunity had been confirmed, how could Luo Fan still have the mood to teach Lin Tian Nan? Teacher, did I do something wrong? When Lin Tian Nan heard that Luo Fan was going to leave, he turned pale with fright and hurriedly knelt on the ground as he cried out, Foolish child, your teacher is not completely free. Naturally, I cannot stay here forever. If you work hard in your cultivation, we will definitely meet again in the future. Luo Fan said with a smile. Lin Tian Nan was unwilling to listen and could only bitterly beg. How determined was Luo Fan's decision? How could it be changed by begging bitterly? He only said one sentence, foolish child. He then pushed Lin Tian Nan away and turned around to enter the training room that he had lived in for 8 years. He closed his eyes and cultivated. Lin Tian Nan saw that Luo Fan was determined and was stunned for a long time. He could not think of any way to change Luo Fan's mind. He could only painfully accept the fact that Luo Fan was about to leave. After accepting, he did not want to waste any more time. He immediately went to Luo Fan's training room and used all the time he had to ask Luo Fan about the problems that he had encountered in his cultivation. The 10 months that Luo Fan had left was also the 10 months that Lin Tian Nan had transcended mortality and entered sainthood. The changes that came with this kind of increase in realm were huge, and the different understandings that came with it were also many. Thus, in these 10 months, Lin Tian Nan had accumulated a lot of problems. Once he opened his mouth, he talked nonstop, one question after another. Luo Fan did not hide anything and casually gave pointers. Every sentence contained a specific mystery, directly pointing to the fundamental mysteries of martial arts cultivation. After all, they had known each other for 8 years. Humans were not plants. How could they be emotionless? Luo Fan couldn't help but feel a bit of affection for Lin Tian Nan. Thus, when he was answering the question, he was actually infusing the source of martial arts into it. To the current Lin Tian Nan, although these words were profound, they were only answers to the questions that he had asked. But when Lin Tian Nan's realm increased, and he recalled what Luo Fan had said today, no matter how many times he thought about it, no matter how high his realm increased, he would definitely be able to gain new understandings from it. Even the key to breaking through to the 9th level of the transcendent realm could be found in what Luo Fan had said today. This was a different kind of teaching method. It was mysterious and wonderful beyond words. Although Lin Tian Nan discovered that Luo Fan was different, because of the limitations of his realm, his understanding was limited. He only knew that the words that Luo Fan used to answer the questions today were very difficult to understand. Although he could still understand it, he had to think about it a few times. This consultation lasted until nightfall before it stopped. Teacher, there is something that I don't know if I should ask. Before Lin Tian Nan left, he nervously asked Luo Fan. With one look, Luo Fan instantly knew what Lin Tian Nan wanted to ask. With a slight smile, he said, There's no harm in telling you my name. However, this matter is very important, so you can't reveal it. Your disciple will definitely not tell others. Remember it in your heart and let it rot in your heart. Lin Tian Nan was overjoyed and quickly said, although they had known each other for 8 years, Luo Fan had never told Lin Tian Nan about himself. Thus, Lin Tian Nan did not even know what Luo Fan's name was. My surname is Luo, and my name is Fan. I cultivate on Heaven Mountain. Luo Fan smiled. This small kiliacosm was created by Luo Fan. Therefore, Luo Fan was equivalent to Pangu in this small kiliacosm. What did Pangu represent in the primordial world? What did Luo Fan represent in this spirit space? Therefore, the seemingly ordinary words Luo Fan contain a mystery similar to the word Pangu in the primordial world. If there was a talented person, through these two words, they might be able to understand the origin of this small world and use a method that Luo Fan did not want them to use to break through this world. Because of this, Luo Fan was not willing to reveal his name. Chapter 109. Heaven and Earth Splitting Technique. The Heavenly Mountain was the towering mountain in the center of this continent. It was also the mountain where the Luo Fan Dojo's Dang Ling Apex Hall was located. The reason why this mountain was called Heaven Mountain by the people of the continent was very simple. It was because during the 10,000 years that Luo Fan absorbed the primal chaos Yuan Qi, there was a gray pillar of light that extended from the sun to the top of the mountain. This strange scene made the mountain seem very special and mysterious. During that time, countless people were interested in this mountain. They wanted to climb this mountain to see what was special about it. However, under the protection of the Limitless Boy, no one was able to climb this mountain for 10,000 years. Therefore, it was called the Heavenly Mountain by the people of the continent, from the meaning that it could be seen but not reached. Young master, young master, young mistress is about to give birth. Just as Lin Tian Nan was about to comprehend the two words Luo Fan, an anxious voice called out from outside. Hearing this, Lin Tian Nan's face revealed an anxious and expectant expression. He didn't care about the mystery of the name anymore. He hurriedly told Luo Fan about it, turned around, and quickly rushed towards the source of the voice. Seeing this, Luo Fan shook his head slightly. Fortuitous encounters could not be forced. He didn't care too much about it. He closed his eyes and continued to cultivate. Luo Fan's wife gave birth smoothly, so there was no need for him to worry. Don't forget, Luo Fan tore off a part of his soul and turned into Lin Tian Nan's son with the inextinguishable spirit light. This child was born to a noble family. How could there be a problem at this critical moment? Sure enough, when it was almost midnight, a loud and clear cry could be heard coming from the depths of the Lin family fortress. A gray light that was invisible to the naked eye shone from the direction of the cry, illuminating half the sky for a moment. Following that, Lin Tian Nan's loud laughter, as well as Lin Zhongshi's voice of thanking the ancestors for their blessings, entered Luo Fan's ears with a light wave of his hand. Luo Fan dispelled the strange phenomenon caused by the reincarnation of the innate, inextinguishable divine light. Then, he smiled faintly and said, "You're finally born. Enjoy the wonderful life in the mortal world." Although that divine light was wrapped by a bit of his soul, he didn't leave many memories in that bit of soul. At this moment, although that bit of soul was a part of him, it was like a blank piece of paper. It was very similar to the innate, inextinguishable divine light, and could also be seen as a blank soul. When it was born, it was no different from an ordinary baby. This was also the only way to allow the natural, indestructible spiritual light to fuse with his soul faster. The next day, Lin Tian Nan happily carried the baby over and begged Luo Fan to give a name. Luo Fan naturally agreed. After pondering for a while, he decided on a name. This child's talent is very good. He should be able to inherit your legacy. How about calling him Lin Chong? Lin Tian Nan didn't refuse and happily thanked him. Luo Fan smiled slightly. Looking at the baby, he suddenly had a strange feeling in his heart. It was as if he was looking at a completely different version of himself. After thinking for a while, he didn't want to wait any longer. On the spot, he was about to teach Lin Tian Nan the battle skills that he promised him. Although Lin Tian Nan was happy that his son was born, he was even more interested in these mysterious battle skills. Thus, he handed Lin Chong over to the servants and began to earnestly learn them. With the martial arts mysteries that Luo Fan had imparted to him yesterday as a foundation, Lin Tian Nan's perception had unknowingly greatly improved. Learning the battle skills that Luo Fan had imparted to him had also become much easier and faster. Thus, in just half a day, he had learned 36 of the most profound battle skills in the continent. In just half a day, his strength had increased more than 10 times. After teaching, Luo Fan didn't want to stay any longer. With a loud laugh, he said, "I'm leaving. We will meet again in the future if fate allows it." Then, his figure disappeared in front of Lin Tian Nan in the blink of an eye. "Teacher, when will we be fated?" Lin Tian Nan was shocked and anxiously shouted, "When you break the void, it will be the time when you and I are fated." Luo Fan's ethereal voice came from the void. "Break through the void." Lin Tian Nan's eyes were filled with reluctance and unshakable determination. In the future, he cultivated with all his heart. Although he wasn't able to break through the void, he lived for nearly 10,000 years before dying and entering the cycle of reincarnation. This is a story for later. Let's not talk about it for now. Speaking of Luo Fan, after he left Lin Tian Nan, he was already out of the Wuji Palace. At this time, the Wuji Palace, under the control of the Wuji boy, had already returned to the top of Buzhou Mountain. It sank deep into the ocean formed by the chaotic energy at the top of Buzhou Mountain and swallowed all the chaotic energy that it could swallow. It continuously refined the body of the palace and replenished the energy that was lacking due to the strengthening of the origin. Feeling the familiar pressure produced by the endless starry sky, Luo Fan suddenly felt like it was a lifetime ago. Inside the Wuji Palace, Luo Fan stayed for more than 18,000 years. Compared to the chaotic world, that was only about 50 years. However, the experience during this period of time was very important to him. Not only did the process of creation allow him to understand the essence of life, the spiritual energy in his body increased by half, and his strength increased greatly. He also completed the arrangement of subduing the connate, inextinguishable spiritual light, which was the key to whether he could obtain immortal life or not. All of this was settled. He only needed to wait for time to pass. After countless reincarnations, the spiritual light would truly be subdued. Then, he would obtain immortal life. That feeling was really hard to describe. It made him feel like he had put down a stone that had been suppressed in his heart for countless years. Naturally, he felt that it was a lifetime ago. After coming to the chaotic world, the omnipotent ability in the spirit space was instantly lost. However, Luo Fan did not feel depressed. Instead, he felt that it was real, and there was another kind of understanding in his heart. He took a step forward, and his figure flashed. In the blink of an eye, he had arrived at the search cave. He sat down cross-legged. Suddenly, his mind moved. He used the yin-yang calculation method to calculate and knew that in the past 50 years, Hong Jun had come to the search cave to find him several times. He knew that Hong Jun must have a question to ask. He stretched out his hand, and a thought was sent out. It crossed a distance of hundreds of miles and directly entered Hong Jun's mind. Hong Jun was testing the Tao in the purple cloud cave below. In an instant, Hong Jun knew that Luo Fan had returned. His eyes lit up and revealed a look of joy. His body shook, and he turned into a gray streak of light, charging out of the purple firmament cave. He arrived in front of the search seeker cave hundreds of kilometers away, and he landed on the ground, turning back into his original form. Disciple Hong Jun requests to see Master. Hong Jun said respectfully at the entrance of the cave. Luo Fan said calmly, "Come in and talk." "Thank you, Master." As he spoke, Hong Jun slowly walked into the cave abode step by step. Soon, he arrived in front of Luo Fan. After greeting him again, he stood at the side and listened to Luo Fan's instructions respectfully. Luo Fan's mind moved. 2 rays of golden light shot out from his eyes. He saw all the details of Hong Jun's body and instantly had a complete grasp of Hong Jun's cultivation state. Not bad. You can replenish your mana so quickly. You have indeed not slacked off in your cultivation. I'm very satisfied. In these 50 years, you have come here 7 times. Have you encountered any problems? Luo Fan said with a smile. Master is wise. I have encountered a difficult problem, so I came to ask for guidance. Hong Jun bowed and said, "Oh, tell me about it." Luo Fan was indeed puzzled. Looking at the situation in Hong Jun's body, his mana was full and there was enough energy in it. His sea of consciousness was completely stable. Even his spirit had made great progress. What was wrong with him? Under such circumstances, Hong Jun's doubts made him very puzzled. Hong Jun did not know the doubts in Luo Fan's heart. He raised his hand and pointed. A spiritual light rushed out of his hand. After this spiritual light left his finger, it spun quickly and absorbed the surrounding chaotic qi in a frenzy in midair. Its size kept increasing, and in a short while, it turned into a jade archive. This jade archive was shaped like a creation jade archive, but it was not Hong Jun's mana unit. Instead, it was condensed from Hong Jun's memories by absorbing the chaotic qi. It was what Hong Jun was most familiar with. It was just a carrier to record words and pictures. When Luo Fan saw Hong Jun's actions, he could not help but secretly praise him. His use of power had reached such a level. It meant that Hong Jun's use of power after attaining the Earth Immortal Fruit of Wei had reached a level where he could do as he pleased. He had already consolidated the itinerant immortal realm after attaining the Earth Immortal Fruit of Wei. He raised his hand and waved gently. The jade archive fell into his hand. It felt warm to the touch, just like a real jade archive. When he opened it up, he saw that it recorded an extremely profound magic art that contained endless mysteries. This technique was a technique to open up heaven and earth. It described how to gather endless chaotic qi and open up a boundless world within it. The mystery and profoundness in it were even comparable to his fundamental Taoist technique, the nameless cultivation method that he comprehended from watching Buzhou Mountain. Moreover, what made Luo Fan even more amazed was that the world created by this technique was even more advanced and stable than the minor kiliocosm within the Limitless Palace. The energy contained within it was also at least 10 times denser than the minor kiliocosm. This technique is extremely profound and contains the mystery of the untainted world's creation. Where did it come from? Luo Fan could not help but be amazed and asked, "This is what I don't understand." That day, in the instant that I completely replenished the energy within my magic power, this mysterious technique suddenly appeared in my mind and was directly imprinted into my magic power units. After that, I felt as if I had lost something. Even my thoughts were a little sluggish. It was really difficult to understand, so I came to disturb Master's cultivation. Hong Jun said with a puzzled face. Luo Fan's mind moved. In the blink of an eye, he understood what was going on. He could not help but laugh out loud. "I see. It turns out that your Pangu's primordial spirit has only completely dissipated until now. It's a great opportunity for you to obtain this technique." A great opportunity. This cultivation method was created by Hong Jun before the original spirit of Pangu, which had merged with Hong Jun's body, completely dissipated. This was a cultivation method, a magic spell, which Hong Jun had the deepest impression of and which he wanted the most. As for why it was a technique to open up heaven and earth, there was naturally no need to say more. Hong Jun was born on top of Pangu's head. He saw Pangu's great magic power that supported the sky and the earth. He also saw the great power of Luo Fan in opening up the spirit space. He naturally yearned for this ability and had a deep impression of it. Pangu's primordial spirit. Hong Jun was surprised. It was the first time he heard this term.